Dear viewers, thank you for choosing Manhwa Compilation channel. Enjoy watching. If you once went to another world, you could become the son of a high-ranking official who worries about his people, or a noble warrior calmly sipping wine, but there is neither one nor the other. You could also become a landowner, the slow-witted son of a landowner, drinking alcohol and having fun with girls. But there is another possibility, to become a newly minted monk mentor. How this happened in the life of the main character of our story. The first thing he noticed was, where did his hair go? But this was only a preface, and the whole story lies ahead. The Songshan Mountains have 36 peaks. Among them, Xiaomu is the highest. It is easy to defend and difficult to attack, so it was a good place to build a sect. Xiaomu Mountain is home to 3 martial arts sects, namely Zhongyue in Dongshan, Devon Temple in Nanshan, and Shaolin Temple at the very top. Zhongyu sect is a Taoist sect with a good reputation, many disciplines, industries. It can be said that this is the largest sect in Songshan. Devon Temple is one of the oldest monasteries, although their reputation is not as good as Zhongyue's. They say it's all in the past. And at the very top of Mount Xiaomu in the Shaolin Temple, only 1 monk and 3 disciples taught. It was believed that this temple was the worst. At first, late in the evening on that same fateful day, nothing foreshadowed trouble. Winged insects flew into the light from the lit oil lamps, burning their wings, and the cool breeze stirred the flower petals. In the main hall of the Shaolin Temple, a monk and his disciples gathered in front of a large gilded statue of Buddha. Hitting the table hang with a metal stick, the old man began the meeting. Turning to the Buddha, he raised his eyes to him. "This night I will die." The old man told the students the news in a calm voice. Even the candle flame flickered from his intentions. "What?" the students shouted in one voice. "When I meditated, I felt and realized that in general the situation had calmed down, so don't panic. There is still some time left, so I will explain the consequences." The monk hastened to reassure his boys. Although from his appearance it was clear that it was time for him to go to another world a long time ago. "Master, now is not the time for jokes," said one of the students. "Jing!" The monk turned to the crying young man with a pretty, very young face. "You are innocent, with a pure heart. Only you are obsessed with martial arts, and nothing else interests you. After my death, remain the same as you were." The old man will instruct the student. Their partings were watched by the other one in succession. Only in the death of the monk did he see his benefit, because after his death, the master would definitely choose the next abbot of the monastery, and no one, in the opinion of this student, could be the Shaolin abbot of the temple. "Hong." The monk turned to him. "Yes?" responded the self-centered student. "There is a verse in the Diamond Sutra, the fundamental text of Buddhism. All facets are lies. If you see an edge that is not an edge, you will see a tathagata. If you are too obsessed with the external phase, it will confuse you. As a teacher, I hope that you will dedicate yourself to studying Buddhism in the future, and you will not let things cling to become the biggest obstacle to your enlightenment," the monk instructed, trying not to show trembling from the cold. The student heard the teacher's lesson. Hong promised, noticing that the master was not puzzled. Then it was the turn of the third follower. "Yiji, you have been smart since childhood. You really inherited my kung fu. Not so much martial art, but its path and scientists." The monk fell silent for a while, looking into the eyes of the student and fingering the beads in the Buddhist rosary. "I transfer my post of rector of the temple to you." And with these words, the old man held out his rosary. None of the students expected such a turn of events. With tears welling up in his eyes, Yiji reached out to the outstretched bony hand of the teacher in order to accept the rosary. "Master, how can you?" Hong did not have enough words to express his emotions, while the newly appointed abbot of the Shaolin Temple sobbed loudly. "I made the right decision. For my sake, don't get into trouble," asked the old man, after which he plunged into his last eternal sleep. At this time, in the present real world, at least in the megalopolis in which our hero lived, the sun was setting. His joy knew no bounds. One might even say he went a little crazy. And who in his place would remain calm, looking through the matte transparent shower door at a young, elastic female body? He, a majestic university student, he is handsome and smart. He went through many difficulties, overcame various obstacles to get this super beauty and look stunning. The young man danced in anticipation, and a pack of orange juice fell out of his back pocket. Without paying much attention to it, the young man kicked the pack into the corner of the room. So today his virgin days will come to an end and the night should be simply unforgettable. Finally, having finished her evening ablutions, she went out. Yunjin. She was wearing nothing except a terry towel and a cap on her head, from under which her chestnut-colored hair spilled out in long strands. Hot drops of water flowed down her body, and she smiled tenderly. Having seen such an unforgettable, unearthly female splendor, the young man could no longer restrain himself. With one jerk, he took off his jacket, dragging the girl with him into the bedroom. Slightly roughly pushing Yuan on the bed, he attacked her. And then, in the midst of the fun, our hero's head suddenly became cloudy and a ringing was heard in his ears. Gradually, his legs became weak, and Yuan, in fear, not realizing what was happening, hid in the corner of the bed. She could be understood, because all she saw from the guy was a piece of his hair. The young man saw this himself, watching himself melt in a piece of the mirror. A little more and the guy and girl lost consciousness. Our hero spent quite a bit of time in a state of weightlessness. Feeling that his physical condition was normal, he opened his eyes and did not believe the picture ahead of him. Firstly, why is he sitting in the lotus position, dressed in a patched cachet and holding some kind of rosary in his hands? Secondly, why, with their backs turned to him in front of some decrepit old man, are two sobbing, shaved young men crawling on their knees? Suddenly, the older one of the couple turned his attention to our hero. Looking at him, the young man realized that the tears from his eyes were insincere. Second junior brother, now that the master has passed away, it's time for the three of us to get down to business. The guy's words seemed to bounce off his teeth. But what the hell is going on? Why is the young man the younger brother, and why is he sitting in front of the Buddha statue? Is the old man who doesn't move really the master? While another younger youth continued to burst into tears, the older youth said that their sect was small, and they still needed a leader. Now our hero realized, after careful observation, that he was a loser. But something in his field of vision was still strange. Out of habit, when the young man was thinking, he would start scratching his head, running his fingers through his hair. But now, he couldn't do that. This is definitely a hoax. What happened to my thick and beautiful hair? Why did I have to move at such a crucial moment, especially since others become relatives of emperors, aristocrats, or wealthy businessmen? How can I be a poor young monk whose master has just died? Is fate really that unfair to me? Our hero screamed desperately in his heart, while his soul was filled with all sorts of negative emotions and feelings. A large three-dimensional screen unfolded in front of him, on which it was written that the Temple Abbot system was being launched. The young man looked at her like a drowning man looking at a straw. Perhaps at least here he will find some answers to his questions? Meanwhile, the slide in the system changed, and the young man was given 3 tasks. First, make an achievement in the boy's skills. That is, refuse sexual relations with female representatives. Often, this has been practiced since childhood. Second, make the Shaolin Temple the largest martial arts sect. And third, make the abbot of the Yiji Temple, that is, yourself, the leader of the martial arts of the world. At first, the fact that our hero would have to not only live, but also do something, confused him. But as soon as he realized that he would be rewarded with money for completing tasks, he immediately became cheerful. System, let's agree. Let me go back and do what I wanted. And then I'll come back here, the young man promised. But the system hastened to disappoint him. Dear owner, the system has not yet unlocked the return to Earth function, so please work hard to complete the tasks, explained the voice assistant. Oh, then you have at least some information about this world unknown to me. Let me see it first. The boy asked the system from. After a couple of seconds, the voice assistant reported that this was not the system with which he was familiar. Folk customs were similar to the ancient times of the country in which the young man once lived. There are also courts and martial arts. In this world, there are writers, great artists who write poems and paint paintings, and martial arts warriors who fight fiercely. There are also few people in the market here who live busy lives in peace and stability. Based on this story, in short, only the strong can break through. A pleasant bonus was that our hero received the memory of the previous owner of this monk's physical body all at once. But if he can return to Earth, then isn't it better for him to live in this martial arts world with 3 wives and 4 concubines? Won't he be happier then? This was definitely the life the young man had always dreamed of. Well, here he was disappointed. Being entertained by dreams, I forgot about the first task, but it turned out that if one of the tasks fails, the owner will be killed immediately. Fortunately, the new owner of Yiji's body did not immediately dive into vulgarity, but only just thought about carnal pleasures. In that case, my dear system, can we agree? Can you please replace the first task with something else? He turned to the voice assistant, trying to make the expression on your face as pitiful as possible, because Yiji did not want to practice the skills of boys and give up pleasure with women. While the young man was grumbling about his fate, Hong looked at the dead teacher and Jing sobbing next to him, and assessed. The old monk's decision put him in an awkward position. Little brother, the self-centered student obviously came up with something and turned to Itza. But our hero did not have any desire to negotiate with him about the post of rector of the temple. Imagine, the master appointed me the next abbot of the temple, and everyone found out about it. What is there to talk about? He said to the senior monk in a quiet, calm voice. The monk in whose body he was stuck remembered that while the owner of the temple, Xuan Min, was alive, he left his post to the second disciple and Yijie, that is, to our hero. The older student hated the mentor. Then he could still object, because he respected Master Xuanming. But now that the elder is dead, the elder will not wait a minute, and the young man understood this very well. Not finding anything to object to him, Hong turned to the second student, trying to lure him to his side. Hey, say something, he asked him. But the pretty young man was too broken and depressed after the death of his beloved teacher, and therefore did not want to hear or interfere in their conversation. But his opinion carried little weight with Hong. Younger brother, after everything the situation has changed. I think it would be very fair to choose someone else among the three of us. Gradually, step by step, the man slowly said, approaching Yijie. The young man saw that he was determined to gain power. Even when their abbot died, not a single muscle moved on his face. It seems that the struggle for the position of rector of the temple is inevitable, or rather between our hero and the man. Although Hanga still had a chance to become the next lord of the temple, this was stated in the previous order. It's a shame that the prescription no longer makes sense. Accordingly, all their plans are useless. The whole situation made our hero feel funny, and he allowed a smile to run across his face. Big brother, why do you think that the master's decision is unfair? He tried to resolve the conflict peacefully. Because you don't watch your language and words. You're stupid. You rape. You steal. You don't know the Dharma, Hong said, pointing his finger at the guy and turning to shouting. But Yiji no longer wanted to listen to his claim to himself, and therefore interrupted. If not for the eccentricity of the owner, am I generally unable to become the rector of a temple? Our hero asked him a direct question. In fact, there was a dialogue between them. But after his glance at his older brother, he felt worse. That's not what I meant, Hong whined, crawling back. He did not understand what was happening at all, and why the aura of the newly appointed abbot suddenly became completely terrible and frightening. And why, when the young man stood up, did he get the impression that he was looking at an angry King Kong? In some ways, he was indeed right. Our hero would love to look at himself from the outside now, but he didn't have time. If the elder brother is so good at dharmas, tell me, who is the father of the Buddha? His eyes sparkling, he asked him a rather simple question about Ijie's theory. At first, Hong did not understand his question. Father of Buddha, Buddha has no father? After a minute of thought, the man answered, and I turned out to be wrong. Buddha's father was King Qinfang, the king of Kapilua. Don't you even know the basics? Yiji shamed him. Ask something else. This question doesn't count, the elder brother said offendedly. There was nothing to do, and therefore our hero made concessions to him by asking, who then is the mother of Buddha? The answer was not long in coming. This is Mrs. Maya, the wife of King Qinfang. Congo answered. Again, his answer was wrong, because before becoming a god, Buddha was an ordinary mortal. King Qinfang's wife was his biological mother, but not the Buddha's mother. I ask you again, who is the mother of Buddha? Our hero asked, leaning towards him in a whisper. He didn't have a mother, since you just said that he only had a biological mother. Hong answered, shedding tears and then out of fear. Buddha was absorbed by the peacock, but soon escaped from his body. He later took the bird to Lingshan, honoring it as his own mother. Don't you know this? You don't even know the basics of Buddhism. What do you even know? The young man humiliated the man. Everything went strictly according to our hero's plan now. And I decided to ask him a third question. Between us, who is more suitable for the position of rector of the temple. Feeling that a threatening shadow hung over him, Hong suggested that Yijie should probably be the abbot, but the man was wrong again. The older brother grabbed his head. "Why is it wrong again?" "Buddha thinks my personality is more suitable than yours." Hong sobbed. "Lies," our hero interrupted his lamentation, heading towards the front door. "For Buddha, all beings are equal. You, me, and Jing, we're all the same. Only we can realize who is suitable for this." Recalling the words of truth, Yiji went out into the street, without moving far from the doorway. The light of the moon gently enveloped him in its radiance, as if saying that if he found himself in another world, he was still not alone. Looking at the young man, Hong had no choice but to admit defeat. After this performance, all three scattered around their small one-room house. Only Yiji occupied the room of the temple abbot. What he was doing was not difficult to guess. The first thing the young man did was to study the system. First, he had to learn how to open the system interface with one movement of his hand. After several attempts, he remembered the algorithm of the actions he needed and now explored the settings with all his might. Finally, Yiji got to the rewards. As in his previous life, this lottery system was similar to the Wheel of Fortune, that is, the Wheel of Fortune. The cell that the pointer points to will become its reward. Rewards will be given to him once a month. There were a total of 36 cells in the wheel, of which 6 are books with the secrets of martial arts, 6 sacred descriptions, 6 Buddhist artifacts, 6 books on construction, 6 lan, that is, money, and the last 6 of all sorts of things. Books about martial arts contained fighting techniques, scriptures wrote about Buddhist values. Books on construction talked about how to build temples and proper buildings. The Buddhist artifacts included a bag, a meditation stick, a rosary, a prayer wheel, a drum, an incense stick burner, and a large tripod. Among all sorts of things there was a ring knife, a pen, a kerosene lamp, a horse, an eagle, and 3 light points in the shape of tablets. Aliana I could get from 1 silver creeper to 1 golden flower. All 36 cells. Secret books on martial arts, scriptures, Buddhist artifacts, books on construction, vines, and all sorts of little things are randomly selected by the system, said the system's voice assistant. In other words, they will become different items in the next draw. It turned out that his thought was correct. But there was one more nuance. Talent is useless meditation. If our hero does not have an obstacle and fear on the way, then he will achieve nothing. He also had to remember that things in his life went right or wrong in their own way. Among the 6 secrets of martial arts, Sutra Bone on the Brain is self-advanced and energetic Silurog in between. All other books are low level. The higher the level of martial arts, the less need for them. Books on construction teach how to make a building from scratch, but everything is described in general terms. And also, if this were written a long time ago, would Yiji now be able to build his own temple? Still, this system was very interesting. With such prizes, it is quite possible that he will be able to achieve his goal even faster. In general, the body and spirit of our hero were filled with a thirst for adventure. The wheel of happiness immediately began to spin, picking up speed. It was spinning so quickly that the young man did not have time to count the revolutions. After several unsuccessful attempts, he became dizzy. Having abandoned this idea, he decided to keep his fingers crossed for his luck. Yiji did not want the scriptures to fall out. Although they are necessary for Buddhists, the Shaolin Temple is too poor now, so let's plan to save them for later. At least, that's what our hero wanted. While looking at the prizes, most of the items in this giveaway were worthless. Except for one thing, according to the experience of our hero of the previous life. Definitely the biggest prize in the entire roulette is the 3 points of light. And now, the wheel gained the required speed and now gradually stopped. The guy's eyes were fixed on the turning arrow. Here they are, the 3 desired points of light. But the arrow ran past them. Oh no! The young man began to tear the hair on his head, but immediately remembered that it was not there, and therefore the pain of failure became even stronger. Everything is fine. According to the law of luck and reward for beginners, I will definitely receive a mid-level or top-level prize. Closing his eyes with his hands, our hero calmed himself in a voice. Having relaxed slightly, he decided to continue watching the wheel. The arrow was slowing down and, according to his assumption, the stop should have been on the 5th or 6th cell. Right now, the following prizes were in front of him: Sutra Bongya, 50 silver lei, large tripod, mountain gate construction order, iron head technique, and arm strength. All these prizes did not suit the young man. For him, everything was too little, and not a single Shaolin monk needed basic martial arts. The other prizes also had their drawbacks. The arrow moved at minimum speed, and here it was, the same main prize that Ije was worried about: a token. Stop, stop, stop. The desperate cry of our hero was even heard by the other two students in the small house opposite, performing the entire evening mantra. But even here, Yiji failed, and his prize was to receive the basic martial art Iron Head technique. If I want to become the leader of the martial arts league, using this Iron Head technique to compete with others, I will definitely become a laughing stock. Having received his prize, the young man remarked upset. Before he has time to return to the real earthly world, he will have time to be creative and wise, literate and virtuous, and rule Jianghu for thousands of years. It seems that right now the first step of this great ideal will begin with his presentation. But what can you do? Although the Iron Head technique is a basic martial arts course, it requires a lot of hard work to learn it. If a youth wants to learn this technique, he may need to use stones. With his mind and body open to new adventures, he opened the textbook. The Iron Head technique is a type of physical and internal strength. It uses physical strength to strengthen muscles and bones, as well as the inner strength contained in the spirit of a person to complement each other and achieve success. If you develop the Iron Head technique, it will become stronger than any stone, which will shatter into small pinches, and iron plates will split. This technique is invincible, Yije read in the preface. Now he changed his mind about technology, and therefore immediately began to study it. After some time, he sighed with relief. The martial arts secrets provided by the system were very convenient. Right now, not only had the youth learned the Iron Head technique, but he had also reached the highest level in this field. With the combination of this technique and the small internal strength of the original owner, his head will definitely become the main weapon of martial arts. But until the need arises, our hero did not want to reveal this secret to anyone, because first, you need to learn how to manage others. In fact, he was very confused. After use, the magical power of this book disappeared, and now it has turned into an ordinary collection with blank pages. Of course, the new abbot of the Shaolin Temple will not be able to quickly create a group of martial artists, because the system may not count it. Suddenly, his thoughts were interrupted by someone's hand, creakingly opening the front door to the abbot's house. Another second and Jing appeared in the doorway, rubbing his still sleepy eyes. At first, he tried to get used to the darkness that reigned in the abbot's house. "It's time to cook," he said in a sleepy voice. "What? But it's still early." Pulling himself up on the street, looking at the sun barely emerging from the horizon, our hero. Naturally, he didn't want to go cook. "Jing!" he called out to his younger brother. The student looked at him in surprise, not understanding why the abbot was lifting the granite stone from the ground. But as soon as he saw that Yijie, with just one grip of his left hand, crushed the stone like chalk, he squealed in surprise. "Second brother, what kind of martial art is this? So impressive!" he almost shouted. Of course, he really doesn't understand anything about martial arts. He's a typical dunce. Our hero thought, pleased with himself, watching as one of the stone fragments landed on the student's head, and he didn't even feel the pain. This is the Iron Head technique. If you listen to me, I will teach it to you in the future, the abbot promised the student. "Thank you, brother, no problem." Jing nodded his head joyfully. "Previously, I was the second brother, that's why I left my place. After I became an abbot, the realization came that I was now a different person, and could no longer deal with the finished product," our hero said thoughtfully. "What should I do then?" The younger brother scratched his head. "It's very simple. Now you are in charge of fetching water from the mountains, and big brother Hong is in charge of cooking. After you bring the water, I will teach you the Iron Head technique in 10 days, Yitse ordered. "Great, brother. You are so kind." Jing was surprised at his well-thought-out plan, and immediately, without hesitation, he grabbed 2 wooden buckets and skipped into the mountains for water. "Be careful." Our hero said goodbye to him, happy that his plan worked, and now he can calmly be lazy. The carelessness of this not-yet-matured child gave him a good mood for the whole day. 2 days after the next morning prayer in the mountains, Qin and Hong went to the temple to run household affairs, while their newly appointed abbot decided to go down to the foot of the mountain and look around. Walking measuredly along the steps of the staircase carved from mountain stone, The young man enjoyed the singing of birds, fresh air, and the gentle rays of the sun. Finally, he came down from the mountain and found himself in a small bamboo forest. Feeling a little thirsty, he went to a clear stream flowing by and drank water. After some time, he again felt his stomach growl, only this time from hunger. For the last 2 days, the young man had been eating only steamed buns and vegetables, and his stomach was very painful. The Shaolin temple was indeed too poor. In the past, when the old monk was alive, he would sometimes do things for people, earning a small amount to live on. For example, he blessed or instructed, but the old monk left, so now we need to study well and start earning money in order to expand. Our hero believed that it would be very easy. When Shaolin began to recruit a dozen disciples or even more, he planned to make a huge stage, increasing their reputation. This way, they can earn more money. If this plan does not work, then it will be possible to recruit students. In the past, when Shaolin taught students, they were worried about their future lives. Only a few people joined the temple. However, very few people could overcome themselves and go through difficult living conditions. The sore point for everyone was food, and it was quite meager. Drawing on experience from his past life, Yiji reflected, if he wants to recruit disciples, he should first become famous, or offer excellent conditions. Otherwise, with so many different sects recruiting disciples, no one will come to them. Because why would people go to the mountains and live a hard life if they can choose a better place? When the young man was already far away from the mountain, he began to catch the bleating of sheep, the barking of a dog, and the loud laughter of women. Coming closer through the bamboo trunks, he saw a shepherdess, behind whom a dog was running with his tongue hanging out, playing among the grazing sheep. This shepherdess was in the memory of the previous owner of the body, and therefore it was bad form to pass by her without saying hello. As soon as our hero began to make his way through the thickets of plants, the girl fell to the ground. Lin Ru, sing another song for my brother, one of the 2 men asked rudely behind the girl's back. Looking at their facial expressions, it was not difficult to understand that they had clearly not arrived in the clearing with good intentions. I hope you understand that now it's better for you to play with us. The man with the bun continued to speak, coming close to the girl, after which he leaned towards her and lustfully stroked her chin. Seeing that the owner was being threatened, the dog, baring its teeth, decided to attack the ill-wisher. Having caught the movement of the dog behind his back, the man struck the animal's stomach with one blow. The dog fell to the ground, whining barely audibly. "Xiao Hai!" Lin shouted excitedly, immediately rushing to her 4-legged friend. "My dear, look what happens when we are not obeyed," said the second robber who had been standing aside until that moment. While the shepherds were rushing around the dog, one of the men with his strong hand pulled the girl's hands behind her back, and the second one began to feel her plump cheeks. "If you don't obey, my brother will feel sad," said the man behind him with a bun. "Let me go. I will sing. I promise," Lin begged. The bandits were so carried away by the girl that they did not notice the ominous shadow rapidly approaching them. One blow of the hand and the man holding the girl's hands lost a couple of teeth, and the second one flew to the side, painfully hitting his back against a stone. Everything passed so quickly that Lin Ru didn't even understand what exactly happened. 2 grown men are trying to establish themselves at the expense of a weak girl. What a pitiful sight. Hiding behind the girl, our hero shamed the bandits. Big brother, big brother. We barely have time to swallow the blood from our mouths. A man with a bun helps his friend get to his feet. "Monk Yiji, why are you here?" the shepherdess screamed when she saw who her savior was. You must run away from here faster. They are young guys from the village. You are not their opponent. Go back to the mountains and call your brothers and sisters who know martial arts. She continued to insist. After listening to her tirade, the young man sighed heavily, realizing that the girl thought that he was weak. "Run?" the man in the bandage asked, having slowly come to his senses. "You bald, shameless ass! Do you want to escape?" he continued to say, blowing blood mixed with snot from his nose, preparing for battle. And only now I noticed that his teeth had fallen out. Bald donkeys run not only to the mountains, they are found everywhere. Be careful not to anger those who should not be taken out. Otherwise I will twist your head and play football with it. The man with the bun commented on the situation with fear in his voice. It took our hero a lot of effort not to burst out with obscene language after insults like a bald donkey and a bald head. "Brother, this bald donkey imagines himself to be the strongest monk, can you imagine?" The man in the bun burst out laughing. But before he had time to have fun, Yiji ran into him head first, striking the man right in the stomach. The veins on his face instantly bulged, his eyeballs almost jumped out, and blood flowed like a fountain from his mouth. "Hey, bald donkey, now try my blow!" Seeing how his younger brother was being beaten, a man in a bandage stood up for him. However, our hero managed to dodge, and therefore the blow went through the air. However, like all subsequent ones. But still, it took a lot of effort for the young man not to be hit, since his opponent had a strong boxing technique with an unusual aura. With weak inner strength, Yiji, even with the help of the iron head technique, would only be able to win with great effort. At the same time, struggling and sorting through memories in his head, the young man came to the conclusion that the shepherdess was the girlfriend of the previous owner, so he could not show his weaknesses in front of her, and the girl could only sit with her legs tucked under her and tremble with fear on the sidelines, stroking the dog whining in pain. However, it was worth ending this whole circus. Having caught on, Yiji decided to use his iron head technique with all his might. When the bandit swung his fist again, the young man did not dodge, but put his head at risk. A loud crunch was heard, and the bones in the man's hand instantly crumbled into dozens of pieces. Feeling the pain, the man let go of the young man, turned his attention to his limbs. But when he saw that his hand was hanging limply, like a rag, he whined louder than the dog, which he himself had thrown to the ground a couple of minutes ago. Although it was not painless for our hero to put his head under attack, he did not have time to think about it now. Wasting no time, he rushed at the man, knocking him to the ground, and without ceasing, he struck one blow after another. "Oh my hand, forgive us, monk!" It was no longer the attacker who begged, but the victim. "Psycho, how dare you pester a girl? Call me master," our hero shouted back to him. "Abbot, please forgive me. Call me whatever you want, but let me go. I beg you," the victim prayed, while the man with the bun, seeing how enthusiastically the monk was educating his brother, decided to quietly and peacefully leave the battlefield. "He escaped!" Lin shouted, pointing in the direction he was going. Exactly 18 milliseconds later, victim number 2 was overtaken. Now his face was dotted with various bruises, abrasions, bumps, and wounds. When our hero was finally satisfied with his result, he finally released the man. "Now you can go too." He let go of him, turning to the man in the bandage. "Wait a little. My elder brother is a disciple of the Chenyo sect. He will come home in August, and when the time comes, I will take revenge on you." The man with the bun promised through broken teeth. His promise reminded the newly minted abbot of the temple of a classic plot twist in ordinary fantasy novels. Usually, when a younger one is beaten, the older brother will definitely come to his aid. "Monk, why are you so reckless? What would I do if you were beaten because of me?" Lin continued to worry. "Unknown future, Buddha girl. You underestimate Abbot too much. What is the point of this fight? In an online game, I died more than 100 times without even blinking an eye." Our hero tried to calm her down. "Who died hundreds of times? You're bragging about something again," thought the shepherdess, and covered her mouth with her fist so that the young man would not see her smile. "And then I realized, oh yes, you just called yourself Abbot? You can't say such things. Be careful, because if your master finds out, he will definitely punish you," she scolded Yiji. But the young man immediately stopped her. Surprised by his reaction, the girl immediately fell silent. "Now the most shameless Shaolin abbot stands in front of you. In the future, when you meet me, call me master," our hero said, giving Lin a radiant smile. "Are you an abbot? Where is your mentor then?" the girl asked a question. With his hands folded at his chest, the young man told her the news. "My mentor has gone to the paradise of bliss." Hearing such unexpected news, the shepherdess froze in surprise, and the dog bowed his head before the new mentor of the Shali temple. "What a pity. Mr. Zhuanming was a wonderful person," Lin quietly commented on the passing of the monk. Tears flowed from her eyes and down her cheeks. Such a manifestation of emotions unsettled Yiji, because for the first time in his life he saw a crying girl. "Don't be sad." The mentor went on a well-deserved vacation. He tried to calm the young lady, who was still shaking in sobs. "Okay now, I just can't control my tears," the shepherdess explained, wiping the wet places on her face. After a couple of minutes, she was already back to normal, and handed the monk a red apple as a token of gratitude. And waving goodbye, she went about her business. "Linru is really a very good girl. Is this really my good, merciful sister? I must go back. I must go back to vulgarity." our hero thought smugly, happily biting off another piece of fruit. Having had a snack, the young man went on his way. As it turns out, under Mount Xiaomu there are several villages and small towns, but among them all there is the largest and most prosperous city, whose name is Lu. Every 15th day of the first Lunar New Year is market day in Lu City. Residents from the Zhou Kingdom come there to sell or buy goods, and some just to have fun. It was there that our hero was heading now, looking from a mountain height near the town. The young man noted that with so many people, the city deserves the title of the most prosperous nearby. Walking through the streets of the town, he noticed that today was a very good day, ideal for promoting Shaolin. While passers-by behind him whispered, pointing their eyes at him, "Look at him! His clothes are so shabby. Have you heard that Master Xuan passed away from the Shaolin Temple?" Such an amount of discussion slightly surprised Yiji, and it took him a lot of effort not to pay attention to people. Suddenly, the young man's ears caught someone's monotonous speech. He was Shariputra, and all people with such a title must take an oath that they will be reborn in another country. But why? And besides, you need to please people everywhere. In the square on the corner of one of the shops, in front of a table covered with a tablecloth on which lay a couple of books and an empty plate, two men in kashaya stood with their hands folded on their chests. With their preaching, they begged for alms. Shariputra is one of the two main disciples of Gautama Buddha, and cannot be reborn in another country without any punishment. But if men or women feel good, they say that Amitabha, this is one of the Buddhas in Buddhist mythology who accepted them and watches over them. This can last from 1 to 6 days. The men continued to talk. However, judging by the empty clay plate, they were not given alms in a hurry. These foreign monks were giving a lecture at the foot of Mount Shaoxi. They really don't believe in the powers of Shaolin. It's time for me to show what I can do. Our hero gritted his teeth in his soul and mentally prepared for a future meeting. But the voice assistant of the system hastened to inform him that the city of Lue is not included in the Shaolin Temple. So any monk can stay here and teach Buddhism. Nevertheless, Yiji believed that sooner or later everything would belong to him. Having calmed down and pulled himself together, he approached two Buddhists. "Younger brothers, is there anything I can do to help the poor monks? You both talked about real Buddhism, which no one could appreciate." The young man simultaneously admired and asked the men, "Elder brother, what you said is true. The world has changed. People don't believe that my Zen sect is real. We've been talking here for 2 hours now, but we haven't received a donation coin yet." One of the men complained. He was shorter than the second man and thicker in body. Our hero thought about it and decided to offer the guys a lucrative deal. "Let's do this. You will begin to cooperate with me. I'll give you a show and you dress me up and we'll split the profits in half. How do you like this idea?" Isa said with a smile from ear to ear. The monks exchanged glances and became closer to each other, discussing the proposal. Looking at the approaching abbot, it seemed to them that he approached them with good intentions. Moreover, they were afraid that they were breaking the rules of Lo City, and in any case, they would not receive food today. However, why would the young man cooperate with them? "So, we just need to stand aside and, for this we will get half the profit. This is beneficial for us, right?" The shorter man began negotiations. "That's right. That's true. But it may be that I won't receive coins either." The abbot agreed with him. Without waiting for the monks to agree, our hero raised their hang, borrowing them for the duration of the performance. The men didn't even have time to object to him, when the young man began to hit himself on the head with an iron plate, shouting loudly, "Dear guests, if you want to listen to stories, then come here, everyone." Naturally, all this did not go unnoticed. "Does anyone want to tell a story today?" people asked each other. "Mommy, Mommy, I want to listen!" A little baby with 2 braids tied into buns on the sides of her head began to beg. Okay, let's go and listen to him." Her mother agreed to the whim. "Little monk, do you want to tell a story?" was heard from the crowd. "These monks are so strange. Instead of preaching scripture, they tell stories," someone shouted in a mocking tone. Seeing the interest of passers-by, our hero put the hang aside, sat down on the table facing the listener, and cleared his throat. "Dear ladies and gentlemen, I wonder if you have heard the story about the monk who studied without holy descriptions. This is an amazing man. He was born very talented and handsome. Even His Majesty the Emperor called the monk his brother. He rode a sacred horse, wore expensive clothes, and ate and drank from golden utensils. However, he believed that money, fame, and property are dirty, so he wanted to go to the West to study the scriptures. Began to tell the story of Yiji. "What happened next with this monk?" asked the same girl with 2 buns. "He became the most famous Taoist monk Tang Xuanyi," our hero said, raising his voice slightly. "Wow, how interesting," the crowd exclaimed, although the story that our hero told actually happened in real life. Anyone can find it on Google. But how could the crowd know this, so they wanted to listen more? When the world was created and the yin and yang courts began, the world was divided into 4 parts, namely Dongshenzhou, Xinyu Heizhou, Nanzhan Buzhou, and Beiju Luzhou. Our story began with a monkey from Dongshenzhou. The young man continued to tell. "What monkey? Is he immortal?" the crowd of people asked first. This monkey was very brave, since he was able to anger the heavenly soldiers and generals. Then people laughed. "Mom, I feel so sorry for this sage. Why was he suppressed for 100 years? Listening to the story, the baby with buns asked her parent. This story was real again. It was called The Monkey King. Our hero remembered her from literature lessons at school. Now his excellent memory came to his rescue and helped him earn money. The Tathagata abandoned the Jade Emperor and all the gods, came out of the heavenly gate with 2 services. Although everyone sympathized with him, no one could help. So he recited the mantra and summoned the mountain of the 5 elements. Then he was imprisoned in a prison that was made in this mountain with the 5 elements, and when he got hungry, he began to eat iron balls lying nearby. When he was thirsty, he drank molten copper juice. And when people cowered, they sent someone after him, who came and saved him. Yiji told the end of the story, thereby answering all the questions of the crowd. And then he hit his head again with the copper hang, after which he threw him far away and announced that he would now tell them a different story. "Hey monk, if you don't run out of stories, then you'll make them up." Putting her hands on her hips, a slightly angry woman stepped forward. "Dear ladies and gentlemen, initially we came for alms, but now it's too late. We can't just leave and return to the temple with nothing." Abbot objected to her. With his answer, he hoped to motivate people to donate money. Fortunately, fate was favorable to him today. The first to throw a coin into the bowl was the little girl with the buns. Following her, the hands of other people with coins reached out to the bowl. After a short period of time, the vessel was overflowing with money. Wallpaper monks did not expect such a result from cooperation with our hero. At this time, the young man blessed the crowd because they are generous people, and if they want, they can visit him and his temple early tomorrow morning in Shaolin, since all the poor monks will be waiting for their arrival. Yiji's performance greatly amused the people. But the sun was setting below the horizon, and therefore everyone began to disperse. As soon as the street was empty, the young abbot turned to his partners and put his arm around their shoulders. "Okay, brothers, now let's split the money and go our separate ways," he suggested to them. The monks were incredibly happy about such luck, and therefore were in 7th heaven. After looking at each other, they decided to introduce themselves. "My name, a poor monk, is Hoi Zhen. Hoi Min is my younger brother. We have lost our temple and are now forced to wander the world. I heard that the younger brother is from Shaolin, so we are wondering if your temple can accept foreign monks?" The older brother, that is, the shorter man, asked with a plea in his voice. Our hero swallowed contentedly. The boys, without noticing it, did as the young man wanted. "Although the Shaolin temple does not accept foreign monks, we could try. I believe that if a monk is not greedy and can pass our test, then he has the right to join our temple." Scratching his chin, allegedly not knowing yet, he reliably answered Yiji's request. Suddenly Zhen perked up. He realized that in front of him was not just some younger brother, but an abbot. "It turns out that you were a real abbot and we 2 poor monks treated you so disrespectfully." They immediately began to apologize to the young man. The guys couldn't believe that this man, dressed like a beggar, actually occupied such a respectful post. "It's okay, don't worry," our hero reassured them with a smile on his face. And in order to distract them, he first suggested dividing the money in order to continue the conversation about other, more important things. "Mr. Abbot, we did not participate in any way in earning money, so you must take everything for yourself." Zhen decided to give up his part of the money. "But I can't do that, because we agreed to divide what we received." Yiji refused them. We think that Mr. Abbot is very talented and will be able to promote his dharma in the future. We both want to join your temple, even if the money is not enough. We ask Mr. Abbot to accept us, Min begged, trying to even get down on his knees if necessary. Fine. The young man agreed to accept the two monks. If he wants Shaolin to prosper, then in addition to restoration, he needs to recruit students to make the temple more popular. At first glance, I realized that you are worthy to join the temple, so come to my temple as soon as possible. He invited the guys. I am glad that his preconceived plan came to life so well. However, Jen and Ming should not think that entering the temple is very easy. Otherwise, they will not perceive Yijie as a real abbot. Seeing how you both want to get into the temple, I suggest that you first join the Shaolin sect. We will be corresponding brothers for a while. I will monitor you and your behavior, and then I will tell you whether you will join our sect or not. Our hero presented the conditions for performing in the temple. He deliberately created imaginary sects that would pressure men to work hard for the imaginary sect. But the guys failed to figure it out, and therefore, bowing their heads and folding their palms opposite their chests, each of them in turn said, "Poor monk Hui Zhen agrees," said the shorter man. "Poor Hoi Min monk agrees," the taller man repeated after him. And then they immediately promised loudly, "The abbot is merciful and the poor monks will never let him down." The sun had set and the world had been illuminated by the moon a long time ago. There was silence everywhere, and only occasionally the lonely cries of awakened birds were heard. Jen and Ming, having collected their meager belongings in small bags on their backs, climbed higher and higher up Mount Xiaomu. "Brother, weren't we too hasty in joining the Shaolin Temple?" The younger brother expressed his concerns after a long journey. "No," the elder assured him. He had a good feeling, which said that if he followed the abbot, he would always have enough food. Eavesdropping on the brothers' conversation, our hero smiled. Although he was tired from this incredibly long day, he began the task number 2. Finally, they arrived. "We are there. This is the Shaolin Temple," Yiji announced, walking through the open gate, and he deliberately announced loudly that now the guys would get to know their brothers. Hearing noise in the temple courtyard, Hong and Jing looked outside. "This is Hong, and this is Jing. Well, these are the new students of Shaolin, Hoi Zhen and Hoi Ming." Our hero introduced the guys to each other. If Jing was incredibly happy that he now had a younger brother, then Hong thoughtfully examined the newcomers, trying to predict whether they would be obedient or not. Yiji, stretching and yawning sweetly, ordered that the Hoi brothers sleep in the same room with Jing and invited them all to rest, since they had a lot to do tomorrow. Lying under the patched blanket, the abbot thought. The Shaolin building was too crowded, and our hero was afraid that this small temple would not be able to accommodate many people. The young man promised himself that he would try to expand the building as soon as possible, but this required money. But soon the flow of his thoughts was interrupted by a sweet dream. But even there, after a long hard day, the problems of today reminded him of themselves, appearing in a nightmare. He dreamed that with the money he earned, he and his disciples began to rebuild the temple. "Little brother, the blue bricks for paving the floor have run out." Trying not to fall under the pickaxe of Yiji, who was sweating from hard work, student Hong. "Brother, the owner of a brick house came to ask about money," Jing said after the man. "Mr. Abbot, there is no more food in the temple." Min said further. "Mr. Abbot, all our money is gone." Jen came to sum up, and all 4 of the men began to approach our hero, asking him to earn money. Unable to withstand such tension, the young man woke up in a cold sweat and jerked out of bed, but his soul sank to his feet, when right in front of him, he saw a dark, looming figure. "Who are you? What do you need? What are you going to do with me?" "I have no money, honestly," Yiji pleaded. "Brother Abbot, there are many people outside who want to see you," Ging said, raising the candle to his face, slightly frightened. But our hero was angry, because in the end he didn't even get enough sleep. When the young man, having dressed, left the temple and opened the gate, a huge crowd of people, also sleep-deprived, appeared right in front of him. However, there was anticipation on their faces. "We came to listen to your stories, master. We arrived from the city early in the morning." Seeing the monk, the crowd shouted, "Sir, my child couldn't sleep yesterday. She begged me to tell the rest of the story, but how could I know?" "Sir, hurry up and write a book. We can't wait for the sequel," asked the mother of that same girl with buns. "Ladies and gentlemen, I haven't seen you all night, and you haven't changed at all." Yiji greeted visitors with folded hands on his chest. after which he told everyone his plans for today. He planned to bow and put incense to Buddha. However, he can tell everyone about the well-known journey to the West in his free time, but not for long, and therefore hopes for people's understanding. But there are 4 more monks here. Just ask them to do all the work for you, recommended the vociferous man. Mr. Abbot, the 4 of us will go to the foot of the mountain to do work. Jen turned on his wits and realized, pushing the rest of the monks back inside the temple. His quick wit delighted our hero. Right now, there's only 1 monk in the temple. That is me. During the Buddha ceremony, the incense will often need to be changed. I'm afraid I won't be able to tell you stories for a long time, Yiji said with a sad expression on his face, throwing up his hands. The crowd murmured in frustration. So that their trip to the mountain would not be in vain, they began to pray to the abbot to come up with something. You're lucky. The poor monk has a simple idea. Each of you can buy some incense, then take turns putting it on so that Buddha will not only see you, but also bless you with peace. After thinking a little, the young man suggested, mentally urging people to hurry up and give their money as quickly as possible. Those interested were immediately found. I'll buy 2 sticks, okay, Abbot? So let's start the ceremony. A male teenager asked with a confident gait, stepping forward. Okay. All you need to do is simply throw 3 copper coins into a clay bowl and light the stick on fire, Yiji explained, leading the boy to the Buddha statue. Why does incense smell like oil? The young man asked, fingering his chopsticks. Buddha Amitabha. Incense contains oil so that the flame has more energy. The more burning incense, the more the devotees will receive blessings from the Buddha, our hero explained, silently admiring his ability to lie and not blush. Dear listeners, do not let the incense go out. This is disrespect for the Buddha. If it stops burning, then the poor monk will be forced to interrupt the stories for today. Yiji repeated over and over again to the people lined up. And when the first stick of incense caught fire, the young man began to continue talking about the great sage Xian. At this time, coins began to fall into the clay bowl. Our hero's plan was ingenious. 1 stick of incense in oil costs 3 minutes. He bought them in bulk, 1 copper coin for each stick. It turns out that the abbot now earns 2 coins every 3 minutes. That is, he can earn 40 coins in an hour, and if he talks for 5 hours, he can get 2 silver coins. Why not make good money? The sticks were burning, and Yiji continued to recite Chang'eng's Journey to the West. The traveler scolded him. You are a vile animal. What place can be called the Cave of the Immortals? How can you pronounce the word immortal? Quickly leave and deliver the message of my lord to your elder. Then I will spare your life, our hero said. He even tried to imitate the right intonation in his cues, and the crowd, with their mouths slightly open, listened to the fascinating story. But one person stood out among the people. This man was different from everyone else. His clothes were a little more expensive than the others, and on the middle finger of his right hand, in a gold frame, sat a red ruby. He was a rather plump man, and his mustache twitched rather. Finally, the day came to an end. It's already getting dark, so that's all for today. If anyone wants to hear the continuation, then come tomorrow, said Yiji, saying goodbye. After he had slightly tidied up the yard and decided to clean the kubozu of incense, he noticed that one of the listeners had not left. It was the same man from the crowd. Seeing that they paid attention to him, the man bowed and introduced himself. I am Xian Delu. I heard the name of the abbot and came here to meet him. However, our hero wanted to rest quickly. I do not conduct personal meetings. If you have something to say it as soon as possible. I'm going to have dinner. I'm afraid that I won't have enough time to talk with the audience. Yijia answered briefly. He noticed that the remaining listener was very smart and resourceful, and therefore perhaps an influential person. Under his gaze, the man shrank slightly, noticing that the monk was too straightforward. Mr. Abbot, I want to discuss a joint business. When you tell stories, I will find someone to write it down. And when the book comes to an end, I would buy this story from you in order to teach people in other cities in the future. Delu immediately suggested. He suggested that perhaps this book would have great potential, which would certainly allow him to earn a lot of money. As for the monk, he believed that the young man had not seen the world, and therefore could easily deceive him. Is it a coincidence that someone gave me a pillow when I wanted to doze off? No, it's definitely just a coincidence. I need to figure out a way to trick a man around my finger. At this time, Ijie thought, smiling kindly at Dilo. There was no time to think now. Not entirely sure, but I'm in. How much money will I receive? He asked the remaining listener. As many as 20 silver coins, Delu answered, smiling with all his 32 teeth. He thought that the monk was stupid, and therefore he had to agree for as many as 20 silver coins. Deal. Only 200,000 coins. It's like a breath of fresh air. Approved the future deal of Yijie. What, 200,000 coins? No, 22, only 22! The man immediately rebelled. It seems that the reader is not doing business for the good of faith. You can leave. Seeing his partner's reaction, our hero immediately decided to see him off. Wait, Mr. Abbott, we can agree on a price of 30. No, 100 coins, the man shouted at his back. I communicate with the reader as with a friend, but he communicates with me as with a fool. Yiji answered him without turning around, enjoying in his heart that he was finally able to utter the forbidden word insult. Mr. Abbott, what kind of business is this where they set the price as they want? Let's discuss it again, Delu prayed, hugging the young man's legs, not allowing him to close the gate to the temple. Mr. Abbott, this is not possible! No! The man shouted. But when he realized that his pleas would not be heard, he burst out with vile abuse. From such an amount of noise that was not typical for the area, even the birds from the nearby trees flew far away. Finally, Yiji decided to negotiate the deal again. He chose the most suitable place, naturally, at the Buddha statue. Delu cried. He himself did not understand why his tears were flowing, either from anger or from the fact that the monk, whom he considered a fool, turned out to be a speculator who could drain all his money. After the conditions that Yiji put forward on his part, Mr. Chien almost had a heart attack because the young man insisted on a full analysis of the story and asked the man for 50 coins per episode. This means that a story of 100 episodes will cost 5,000 silver. Fortunately, the young man allowed the man to pay in installments. First, he pays for the first 30 episodes, then for the next 30 episodes, and so on. This method was more or less acceptable. While Delu was coming to her senses, our hero was rereading the contract again and again. Suddenly, the young man stood up and invited the listener to visit the mountain of the Shaolin Yuhan Temple with him. Hearing Delu's proposal, he felt that another pit was probably waiting for him ahead, and therefore hastened to refuse. No, I still have some things to do, so I guess I'll go first. Mr. Chien shook his head from side to side. I want to accompany the admirer, but I also want to give you a tour of the Shaolin Temple, Ijie said, hugging Delu by the shoulders. The man had no choice but to agree. Still, going down is much easier than going up. Once again, our hero came to the irrefutable truth. Going down the stone stairs. Listener Chien, what do you think about the future of the Shaolin Temple? He asked the thoughtful man. The Yohan Mountain region, where the Shaolin Temple is located, is very large. It is easy to defend and difficult to attack. He is also famous for his figures of various military leaders. I can imagine that the future of the temple is quite extraordinary, Mr. Chien suggested. Oh, I'm surprised. Does the admirer really know about the philosophy of the Shaolin Temple? The abbot of the temple admired the interests of his companion. Shaolin preaches compassion and salvation for all beings. Of course, this is welcomed among the people, but at the moment it is not so popular. If the temple can gain a name for itself in the world, it will definitely attract a lot of attention, continued to tell Delu. Thank you for your opinion. It so happened that our opinions coincide, because I also believe that Shaolin will definitely flourish, but at the moment there are still many difficulties, such as funds, silver coins, and so on. The monk thanked and complained at the same time. After his words, the man suspected that he was again being drawn into some kind of scam. Meanwhile, our hero decided to take him away from the main road leading along the mountain to one of the small rocks. From her height, the entire temple of which Yiji was the abbot was clearly visible. Look, I want to build a mountain gate here, as well as a wall. Lay the ground with bricks and rebuild the road up the mountain for everyone, but this requires a lot of silver coins, and I am a poor monk without a penny in my pocket. Pointing to the temple, the young man pressed for pity. Thank you for remaining a monk, otherwise I would not have a place in the city of Lu. Delu thought, looking at him, and therefore the poor monk wants to make another deal with his admirers. Referring to the future of Shaolin, how to guarantee to borrow a few silver coins from you. What do you think about it? Suggested the abbot. Guarantee of future income? What kind of guarantee is this? At first the man didn't understand. Mr. Abbot, with all due respect, although I am optimistic about the future of Shaolin, what you said is just dreams. If the abbot's monastery is established but does not bring in money, won't it be a great loss for me? After a little thought, Qian began to refuse. Don't be alarmed, because in fact, since you are optimistic about the future prospects of Shaolin, it's all a matter of chance. You have to be brave and treat this as an investment that can bring you a lot of money in the future. If you want to earn a lot of money, then you must not only have a good vision of the situation, but also courage. Iji decided to cheer him up. The man had no answer to his optimistic stream of words. Admirer, I have a proposal. If Shaolin does not bring money in the future, then the poor monk will tell you a story no less interesting than Journey to the West, absolutely free of charge to compensate for your losses, suggested the monk. In other words, the general tendency of the world will combine for a long time and will separate for a long time. At the end of the day, the 7 kingdoms disintegrated and united into Qin, and after the goal was destroyed, Chu and Han disintegrated and formed Han. The Han dynasty rebelled, as the progenitor beheaded the White Snake and ruled the world later. Guangwu Zhongxi was handed over to Emperor Xian, and the dynasty split into 3 kingdoms. The young man, inspired by the ancient history of China, began to tell, and he briefly told the most epic moments. Just 3, admirer. What do you think about this story? The monk asked Delu. Wow, super, how amazing. This story must be sold to me. Chen immediately took the place of the future buyer. I mentioned the investment earlier. Do you understand this clearly? Our hero asked again. No problem. I will definitely invest money in this business. The man agreed, full of enthusiasm. This is the right decision, Yiji praised him. In my heart, I rejoice that 5,000 coins have been added to the property of the Shaolin Temple, part of which he received that same evening. Now there was really enough money to start construction. Lying on the bed before going to bed, Yiji thought. What he had in mind was a large project that would be completed in 3 or 5 months. The young man hoped that Qian would be able to bring a lot of workers and materials by tomorrow. Suddenly, the system screen unfolded in front of the lying young man with a message saying that the Dragon Boat Festival had opened and he had been awarded 1 lucky ticket. Does the system also hold promotions every New Year holidays? Yiji exclaimed in surprise, jumping up on the bed. And then I decided to use the lucky ticket by spinning the wheel of fortune. The main prize for which he was rooting was, naturally, 3 points of light. However, he got 3 lucky tickets, possibly. The monk was incredibly happy about this prize because he received a super rare item for the 2nd time. And so he spun the wheel of fortune again and received 1 Lotus Sutra, a wooden fish gong, and the order of building the pagoda of 10,000 Buddhas. First of all, our hero began to examine the fish gong. In appearance, it did not differ from ordinary wooden one. Without wasting time, the young man decided to try the thing by hitting it with an iron hammer. But the gong was unusual. As soon as the sound of striking metal was heard, our hero felt the warmth of the sun, sea air, a light breeze, and loud, joyful exclamations of his friends. He moved for a very short period of time to one of his pleasant memories. This gong turned out to be a real treasure that calms people's minds and allows them to forget about their problems. Yiji promised himself that when the time comes, he will knock on this fish gong next to someone who is upset, sad, dissatisfied with life. Maybe this way people will be able to sort out their problems and turn to Buddhism, and then the temple of the young man will rise from its knees. Was this an incredible opportunity? Following the gong, he began the Lotus Sutra. It looked like a small book, bound in gray leather. Not wanting to put the book in a distant drawer, the young man opened it to the first page he came across. And the knowledge all at once began to pour into the brain of our hero. As with the previous textbook about the art of the Iron Head, in the end, the book became completely empty. This huge amount of knowledge is very attractive. Having received the information, Iza summed it up loudly. Next in order was the order for the construction of 10,000 Buddha pagodas. This is also a pretty good thing. Perhaps it can play a decisive role. Our hero remembered that earlier in ancient times, theories about miracles and false miracles were especially loved. For example, like colorful happy clouds, the appearance of a cruel samurai, and golden light covering monasteries in order to attract a large number of believers. If the young man comes up with something real and hires someone to retell the story, he will attract even more believers. He can also do another trick: sacrifice Buddha statues. To ensure safety in this way in the future, he would not have to worry about purchasing incense for the temple. Although Yijie was a little regretful that he did not receive any new martial arts techniques this time. But all these three things are useful for the Shaolin Temple to complete task number 2. The monk decided to think about the techniques later, since the Iron Head technique could still be used. The sun had barely risen above the horizon when our hero woke up. This is probably all because his previous owner's physical body was used to getting up early. Having gone out into the courtyard of the temple, the young man began to warm up in order to drive away the last shackles of sleep. Before he had time to properly exercise, he saw a figure in the crowd of Qiandelu workers at the temple gates. "Mr. Abbot, I brought all the people, and they took money with them," the man reported, rubbing his hands contentedly. "Admirer!" Our hero rushed to him with outstretched arms. Mr. Abbot reciprocated the matter, but as soon as the young man approached him, he snatched a small rag bag from him. "This is the money we agreed on yesterday, right?" asked the monk. "Yes. Here we have 1,000 silver notes and 5,900 silver bills." The man cleared his throat and reported. He really thought that the abbot wanted to hug him, but he was only interested in money. The young man weighed the bag in his hand, as if checking the authenticity. After all, this was the first amount of money for the construction of the Shaolin Temple. Having hidden the bag in a safe place, the young man pulled out a scroll covered in writing on all sides, and he rolled it out among the parting surprised workers. "And so, friends, let's start construction. From here to here, we must build a wall around Yuohan Mountain. This part will be completely covered with bricks, the road up the mountain will be restored, and handrails will be installed along it on both sides." Enthusiastically told his plans for the construction of Yiji. Listening to his construction plan, Delu drooped. "Mr. Abbot, I'm afraid this won't work." The man came close to the young man and whispered in his ear, "What's wrong? Infrastructure is the main priority. It is better to do everything thoroughly now than to redo it in the future." The monk answered him, "I mean, to repair all this, you need about 30,000 silver. Where will you get so much money from?" Delu proceeded to the main question, worrying that more money would not be miraculously sucked out of him. "It's windy here. Follow me inside for a cup of tea," Yiji suggested, thereby urging his partner to discuss everything in a more secluded place. No, don't worry, Monsieur Abbot. To be honest, my bank can be called the largest branch, and the maximum loan amount cannot exceed 10,000 tiles. Your building plan has changed. I can't do anything about it." He spread his hands, trying not to look directly into the eyes of the young man Del. "Oh, that's how it is. It turns out that your powers are not enough. You manage a branch, so there must be a main office. Can you tell me where it is?" Yitze asked, thoughtfully scratching his chin. "The main office is in Jingling, and my branch is in the city district. But to be honest, my bank is not even a branch. The maximum amount you can borrow from the branch is 50,000, but I think that the temple of Mr. Abbot will be built for 30 or 40,000. The man shared information. "If you want to borrow money from a branch, can I then recommend a couple to you?" Yiji asked. "It's not a problem that you want to borrow money there, but I'm afraid it won't be easy," Mr. Qian suggested. At first the abbot did not understand what he meant. It turned out that the owner of the branch in the district was a man surnamed Zhao, and was a talented person with a great past. However, he failed the entrance exams many times and has now become a merchant in a bank. This man had a controversial personality. He could easily talk to people and he liked it, but only if those who came could not play their cards correctly. "Then what kind of person can Master Zhao like?" asked the monk. He believed that it was quite normal for a writer who constantly failed and had underappreciated talent to have such a strange character. Based on Delu's story, Master Zhao loves talented people. One day a man came to him who wrote a quatrain of 7 characters, and then the owner applauded while standing, and on the spot, he gave him 50,000 taels. This should be easy. Our hero thought and asked Delu to tell Zhao that he, the poor monk, would like to meet him tomorrow, because he wants to visit the owner. What talents can a monk have? I thought that after learning about the difficulties he would retreat. It never occurred to me that he would insist on a meeting with the bankers, thought Delu, and out loud he suggested to the abbot that we meet tomorrow at the foot of the mountain and go to the branch together. The next day, after several hours of non-stop walking, Yiji and Mr. Qian stopped in the city of Jingling at a concrete house with wooden beams and a roof. People passed by, bustling back and forth, and some, tired, sat down in the shadow cast from the house to rest. At the entrance to the bank, a very young boy was sitting at a wooden desk, sorting through and signing some papers. The owner has a specific personality, and if something goes wrong with hospitality, then I apologize, Mr. Abbot. Dalu apologized in advance. You don't have to worry so much. Look at it from another angle. As just the interest of the poor monk. Our hero reassured him. Hearing the conversation of the people entering, the young man at the desk put the documents and pen aside and began to greet the visitors. Seller Qian, where are you from here? The clerk asked. Can I see the owner? Dalu asked in response, thereby explaining the purpose of his arrival. The young man immediately headed to the door leading to the courtyard. But then he drew attention to the second visitor. In him he recognized the same storyteller, the monk about whom loud rumors had already spread. The clerk never expected that today he would have a meeting with a celebrity, and therefore his eyes shone with joy. It's really me, poor monk. Seeing a bit of confusion on the young man's face, Yiji confirmed his identity. In his heart, he did not expect that he could meet his little fan. This even flattered him a little. Mr. Abbot, I came to the Shaolin Temple 2 days ago to listen to your stories, but I only heard that Sun Wukong was imprisoned under Mount Yuji. Sir, your stories are very interesting. How did you come up with such an interesting story? I admire you very much. Running up to the monk and looking at him like a curiosity, the young man said in one breath, Boy, we need to see the owner as soon as possible. You should let him know about us. Reminded him that he was at Dalu's workplace. Oh yes, Mr. Abbot, don't go. I'll be back soon. I also want to know what happened to the Monkey King after his imprisonment, but I asked my friends to tell me. But they are not very good at it. The clerk begged as he ran away. What a talkative and very nice guy, Iza said, looking after him with a smile on his face. Before returning back to the guest hall of the bank, the errand boy decided to brew aromatic green tea. Owner Zhao said that he cannot accept you now. He asked me to wait here. The clerk conveyed the order to the head of the branch, treating visitors to tea. Taking the cup, the monk noticed that the young man's emotions were very different from those when he left. Perhaps the owner deliberately asked the clerk to wait in order to humiliate the abbot. But what then made him angry? What is your name? While I wait for Master Zhao, I can tell you the continuation of the story after Mount Wuji. Our hero suggested, putting a cup of tea on the table. Wow, this is just a great idea. My name is Huang Fei Hong. Monsieur Abbot, are you hungry? I'll pour you another glass of water. What do you like to eat? I have here an osmanthus cake made from evergreen deciduous flowering plants, a plum cake, and a sugar cake. The clerk immediately got to the point, offering a huge selection of sweets to a huge plate. Looking at how Huang filled a cup with tea, the monk began to think. The Shaolin Temple can indeed consider recruiting worldly disciples with powerful martial arts like the clerk that appeared before him. A small wooden stool sank with a crash onto the stone floor opposite Yijie, who was sitting in a straw chair. Fei Hun, carried away by the continuation of the story, plopped down on top of her. Abbot, why do you say that the Tathagan Buddha is not so bad? Even if Suk Wukong caused a riot in the heavenly palace, he should not be imprisoned under the mountain for 500 years, right? When I think about this, I get scared. If it were me, I wouldn't be able to bear it after just 5 days, or even just hours. Dialogue, young man. Don't talk nonsense. Tathagana Buddha is the head of 10,000 Buddhas, and the man in front of you is the abbot of the temple. Don't talk bad about Buddha. Dela tried to shame him. It doesn't matter. Buddha is merciful, and I won't blame him. Boy, have you ever seen a Buddha statue? I asked the clerk Yijie. I often see a statue of Buddha. He has a round head, a big belly, and is always smiling. He is better than Boss Qian, Fei Hong answered openly, childishly. Hearing such a slightly offensive comparison, Delu choked on his tea. Yes, Buddha also knew that he was very fat, and that's why he wanted to lose weight. Not paying attention to the money, partner, the monk continued to tell. Lose weight. Did Buddha then lose weight? Not understanding where he was leading, the abbot expressed curiosity. Fei Hun. Yiji immediately began to explain to him. In his opinion, Buddha really wanted to lose weight, so he ate vegetarian food every day. He even came up with a special exercise for weight loss. Did it every day, but still did not lose weight. Eventually, the Buddha even resorted to cruel tricks such as cutting off the meat from his body and feeding it to the eagle, but the weight remained the same. Buddha used so many methods, but all to no avail. And when he found out that Suk Wukong eats all day and looks better than him, he began to envy. In a fit of rage, he took Suk Wukong under the mountain of 5 elements for 500 years and said to himself in his heart, I will lose weight. This time, I will let you eat for 500 years so that I can lose enough weight." From such a cheerful alteration of the truth in history, Huang grabbed his sides with laughter. This abbot is really difficult. He does not adhere to worldly concepts at all. How dare an observer joke about Buddha? Yes, he is really different from us, Delu thought, listening and watching the monk. Finally, when the day was approaching evening and many stories had been told, the clerk appeared. "Master Abbot, Merchant Qian, the trapper has invited guests to a banquet and asks Merchant Qian and Master Abbot to join them." Faihun conveyed the instructions. "Ask." Indicating the direction of the road with his hand, he asked Yiji Delu to go first. The man was a little angry that Zhao allowed them, visitors, to spend the whole day in the reception area, and at night, invites other guests. This was definitely not a sign of friendliness. If we were invited, it means that we correspond to him. "Boy, take us through," our hero asked. "Fine, please follow me," Faihun answered them. Along the way, walking around the estate, the clerk showed visitors the beauty and decoration of the gazebos, gardens, statues, and stone figures. The gazebos had many paths between them. In one of them, the seller Qian and Yijie noticed several men. One of them, a shaved bald man with a long mustache, was sitting in a gray robe, and huge beads adorned his neck. The second man stood drinking sake, wearing hanfu decorated with various patterns. He had a long, thin beard and an iron hairpin that tied all his hair into a high bun. Next to him, opposite the shaved man, sat another man younger than both of them, lazily waving his fan. "Shopkeeper Zhao, Shaolin Abbot and salesman Qian are here." The clerk turned to the man with a beard and a patterned hanfu. "Oh, Master Abbot, since everyone is already assembled, let's sit down. The store owner thanks you for your kind invitation." A smile instantly appeared on the shopkeeper's face. "Let me introduce you to each other. This is the pride of our district, the fairy of iron perseverance and the romantic hero Chen Dingchen," and pointed to the man who was fanning himself. "Glad to meet you," Dingchen greeted. It turned out that he was a celebrity throughout the area. Not only does he have an elegant literary style, but he is also excellent in martial arts. He is amazingly skilled at punching holes in human bodies with a folding fan. Once, he even killed 4 great villains outside the city to secure the surrounding area. Listening to the praise, Dingchen again opened his fan, hiding his slightly displaced face behind it. Unlike everyone else, Delu believed that these were not 4 villains, but just little gangsters. But I decided to keep my opinion to myself. "Oh, so this is the hero Chen. Please forgive my disrespect." Our hero bowed to him, and the shaven man with huge beads around his neck turned out to be the overseer of the Fawang Temple on Mount Shaoxi and was the Master Li Xuan. He was engaged in Buddhism and martial arts, and was the younger brother of Master Likongo, keeper of the Falang Temple. Next came the turn of the visitors. "This is Qian Delu, treasurer of the bank in the city of Lu. So which temple are you speaking from?" Zhao stuttered slightly. "This poor monk is the abbot of the Shaoling Temple." Our hero said for him, referring to himself, feeling how the shopkeeper was clearly hostile to him. And he's never met him before, so he doesn't know why the man behaves this way. The Shaolin Temple is also located on Mount Shaoxi. It is located at the highest point. The place is very good, but the sect was created a long time ago, and its reputation is not that great, and the population of Shaolin disappeared, and with it their skills. Now, there are probably only a few students left, and I don't even know how good they are. Judging by the abbot's age, he should only practice martial arts and Buddhism. I'm afraid he's not good at Taoism. Told others a little about the temple that our hero Xuan represented. Such rudeness did not go unnoticed by Yiji. "I don't agree with what Master Li said. Although there are not many disciples in my Shaolin sect, they are all connected in heart. And recently, some monks began to join the temple." The young man corrected his story. Regarding the theory of martial arts and Buddhism, the words of Master Li are even more incorrect. There is no limit to learning, and the one who achieves this understanding first is very good. I believe that my Shaolin sect is not inferior to any other sect in Buddhism and martial arts. Sooner or later, Shaolin martial arts will be known to everyone in the world. Our hero made a loud statement, not paying attention to the rest of those present. "Ah, Abbot Yiji, your demands are too high. How dare you say that martial arts from Shaolin will be famous all over the world? I'm sure there are hundreds of monks better than you in Fawang Temple. My mentor, elder brother Li Kong, is very strong in martial arts, but even he dare not say such things. He immediately attacked the abbot of the Shaolin Temple Xuan. Suddenly a hand appeared in front of his face with 3 fingers outstretched. In less than 3 years, Shaolin will become known to everyone. Just wait and see for yourself, our hero promised. And then the overseer of the Fawang Temple could not stand it. What a tone, Shaolin Abbot. Since you are so confident, the poor monk wants to exchange a few moves with you. Dare to fight me. In a fit of negative feelings, he proposed a battle to Yijie. No, this is the house of the seller Zhao, and he is a scientist. He does not like fighting. As guests, we naturally must abide by its rules. After we leave, I can fight you. The young man reminded Xuan of the rules of good manners. The shopkeeper only looked at the guests with growing excitement. Yiji grinned. I came here today to borrow money and therefore tried not to create problems. But do you think that after this I'll just let you go? Xuan thought, looking at the grin of the Shaolin monk. Okay, the discussion will be postponed for a while. But the abbot just said that in his school, Buddhism and martial arts are not inferior to other schools, and that he also has notes about Buddhism in books. Since salesman Zhao is a scholar, maybe he can then compare kung fu from books? Without wasting time or moment, he suggested. Our hero is thoughtful. We reflect on the situation in general. Abbot Yiji, are you afraid? In any case, if you're sorry, we'll forget about this situation. Even a plea for forgiveness flattered the warden well. Fei Hong and Mr. Qian were against such a challenge, but the monk stopped them with one movement of his hand. Of course, it will be better this way. But if we are talking about Buddhism, then I'm afraid that the seller will not be very interested in this. What about poetry? He suggested. The shopkeeper did not expect such a turn of events. Exactly, what a good offer. Today it would be wonderful for me to hear your beautiful poetry. Zhao, clapping his hands, joyfully supported the idea of the Battle of Poets. Poetry is of course good for entertainment, but don't forget about prose. He must be worthy, otherwise the poems will not be very pleasant. Xuan expressed his opinion. Can Master Li tell me what prize he wants? Dinshan entered into the dialogue. The prize should be what we really need. What the poor monk wants to say is that if the poem he writes is approved by shopkeeper Zhao, how about giving that poor monk the 30,000 taels of silver he mentioned earlier? The warden put forward the terms of the reward as quickly as possible. If the verse fits, then giving you this money will not be a problem. Zhao agreed, sipping sake as if sitting in front of the sea, which is beginning to rage. I'm from the street, so I've heard a lot of poems. Why don't I become a judge? Dingchen offered to become the winner determiner. Looking at the Trinity, our hero was a little afraid that all these 3 people had already discussed the issue of the loan, and were now just pretending. What do you think, Abbot Yitze? The shopkeeper asked the monk's opinion. If the poor monk's poems sound good to your ears, then I will have to ask the merchant Zhao to lend 50,000 taels of silver, said the young man. Xuan grunted displeasedly at his words. Then it will depend on whether the monk has a talent for this talent. Zhao is already very interested in the future struggle of words. But what about those who lose? If someone loses, they will receive a fine in the form of drinking a bottle of wine, Chen Dingchen said, laughing out loud. I'm not going to accept any objections. But that won't work. If Master Li and the abbot were to drink a bottle of wine, it would be a violation of their commandments. The shopkeeper was concerned about the moral values of the guests. What do you think, Master? Dingchen asked the warden. If the poor monk loses, he will punish himself with a bottle of wine, just as Hero Chen said. Agreed with the idea of punishment, Xuan. What do you think, Abbot Yitzi? All 3 men asked at once, loudly turning to our hero. Mr. Qian really wanted to start a conversation, but unfortunately he did not have such an opportunity. He believed that even if Master Li was a little better than the abbot, he was still a guest and had no right to humiliate him like that, and at least our hero deserves some henna. Even if his opponent wanted him to break his commandments, the only one who would do this would be the opponent. But even if the young man loses, he is not afraid of such punishment, because in his past life, he quite often pleased himself with alcohol. Since Master Li is so brave, the poor monk cannot lag behind him. Wine and meat pass through my stomach, and Buddha is in my heart. If the poor monk loses, the Buddha will understand this abbot. accepted the challenge to fight Yiji. This monk has now elevated himself so much that even if he drinks alcohol and eats meat, this will only create a good reputation for him. For the sake of the development of the temple, he is ready to endure humiliation. What an interesting monk, thought the shopkeeper, enjoying the current situation. And having drunk to the last drop of sake, he put the bowl upside down, thereby saying that now the battles of poets officially begin. And in confirmation, he hit the bottom of the cup with a wooden chopstick. But it was not only in the gazebo that the situation became tense. Looking out from the garden trees and bushes, the maidservants admired the beauty of the newly arrived monk, Abbot Yijie. The poor monk offers to write poems related to Buddhism, since we are monks. What do you think? Said the warden. Our hero nodded in agreement with him, as if saying that this is how it should be. Xuan decided to speak first. Being prepared for anything, he had prepared several Buddhist verses in advance, and therefore believed that such a midge as Yiji could not compare with him. But our hero silently prepared to listen to his art of words. Partial went to a vegetarian Buddhist house, no matter what happens in the sky. The convergence also buried thousands of monks. The remaining branches of the imperial army are not yet thriving. What he said were the names of the poems. Wonderful, as expected from Master Li. So sensual, picturesque, and exciting. Dinchen almost shouted, clapping his hands in delight. However, Zhao was not so enthusiastic about poetry, believing that the poems were good, but there were better ones. And now I decided to listen to the young abbot. After Xuan, our hero, spoke, he asked the audience to give him a minute so that he could rummage through his poetry library. Finally, he found what he was looking for. The poor monk will now show you his skills, he informed everyone, drawing out contentedly. The moon color is extremely beautiful today. Yijie began to read. Yes, apricot flowers and the bright moon, wine tasting and poetry. This is all one of the best pleasures of life. Mr. Qian almost interrupted him. Young abbot, don't delay. Hurry up and read your poems. Xuan hurried the young man. Master Li, a monk develops the mind, and impatience goes against the teachings of Buddhism and affects the state of mind. Our hero read him a short lecture. Poor monks don't stick to it. I'm afraid you're trying to get off topic now, abbot, Xuan said, and turned in the opposite direction from the young man. But the monk had no time for this. He looked at the night sky. Zen like the moon without dust. He read the first line of the poem. All four froze in amazement. Good writing does not adorn rare treasures. An acquittal is associated with magnificence. Poetry is being renewed. The heart of thunder is like the moon without dust. Yinhuai cheek and full of spring. Qi leaves develop in the wind. 4 moments in which the 6th dynasty flourishes, but the 6th dynasty disgraced luxury. The young man continued to read poetry. This art of putting words into sentences fascinated the shopkeeper. Another moment, and he sank into oblivion. A man woke up on the bank of a small babbling stream. The greenery was pleasant to the eye, and the sun's rays did not make it hot. In front of him, something very tasty was being prepared on the pot-belly stove, and Yizai was sitting next to him in his hands, holding his prize from the system, a fish gong. Seeing that Zhao had come to his senses, the monk struck the fish gong again, and in the blink of an eye, the man and the young man were sitting on the back of a huge whale, and the mammal had wings on its sides. When the riders began to more or less keep their balance, Keith set off on a journey through the air. Now the shopkeeper saw the world through the eyes of a bird from a bird's eye view. The world of beauty filled the emptiness that the rider had, and the feeling of the spring wind was truly amazing. And then the metallic ringing sounded again. Zhao opened his eyes slightly tiredly. Good offer. Yinhuai is chic and full of spring. Abbot, your great aspirations and ambitions have become a lesson to me. If you can understand this world, then make a name for yourself without any effort. He recommended to the young monk. Seller Zhao praises the poor monk. I feel honored and fortunate at this time. This poor monk wants to build a place for Shaolin monks to live and study, so I came to ask the seller for help. Otherwise, the poor monk really won't be able to do anything. Explain the reason for the loan to Yiji. Hearing his confession, Mr. Qian sighed heavily. Now he will really have to help the young men. I admire the righteousness of the abbot. The shopkeeper folded his hands in a greeting and slightly bowed his head in response. Unlike him, Xuan was not in such a calm state. You still haven't said whose style is better, his or mine? He attacked the merchant. "Master Li, I'm afraid that you can't even compare with the abbot," Delu said, bringing the cup to the thirsty lips of the drink. "Master Li, it is impossible to make a comparison between stubborn stones and golden jade. If you try to compare them, it will only show that the person holding the stubborn stone has no eyes and cannot distinguish where the golden jade is." Qian Dingchen lazily fanned himself, assenting to Mr. After his words, Zhuan's anger reached the highest point on the scale. "I don't believe what you said. Seller Zhao, you are a scientist. Tell us what you think." He rushed to the shopkeeper in search of justice. "Master Li, Abbot Yiji told an excellent poem. This is the first time I've heard it, so let's not even try to compare." Not wanting to listen to the indignation of the temple overseer, Fa Wang Zhao turned away and looked at the insect. Satisfied with himself, our hero poured himself some tea and, slightly tired, sat down at the table. "Okay, just great. That's only 30,000 tiles of silver. As long as my brother does not sit still, he can get the same amount without effort. Since you are not willing to lend to me, then I'll just leave." Without even leaving a meager goodbye, full of anger, Xuan stood up from the table. The shopkeeper wanted to object to him, but realized that his words would not reach the ears of the listener. "Abbot Yiji, you can build your Shaolin temple and spend as much money as you need for it. If Shaolin is not successful, you do not have to return the money to the seller Zhao," Dinchen noted. "You don't have to worry about it. The poor monk will do everything right. Even if he doesn't succeed, it will be the poor monk's problem. But I don't think that will happen anytime soon." Our hero answered him, saying goodbye. "Continue to act so crazy," was heard in the silence of the night. It was Zhuan who, full of anger, closed the branch gate with a roar. Crows responded to his cry with dozens of voices. After starting task number 2, the reports finally arrived and Mr. Qian was sent as backup just in case. Zhao, the branch owner, had already signed a receipt and loaned 50,000 taels of silver for the construction of the temple, which would be repaid when Shaolin made a profit in the future. Everything went like clockwork. As they say, if you have money in your pocket, don't panic. Now the infrastructure construction of the Shaolin temple has finally officially begun. Even the always lazy Hong joined in. Everyone in the Shaolin temple united, and the day of sunrise was inevitable. And Huang Fei Hong, Mr. Zhao's clerk, became the first student in the Shaolin temple. These were the first victories, and our hero rejoiced, looking at the hundreds of workers on the temple grounds. But soon the shackles of his relaxed state left him. "Master Abbot, what happened next?" A voice was heard as if from thin air. Later, this red demon pointed a spear at the Monkey King and tried to kill him. The Monkey King also quickly took out his golden club to swing it away. Our hero jumped up from the lotus position, looking around. Then he smiled. His profession of telling stories became so ingrained in his life that little hallucinations began to haunt him. Suddenly, the gates of the Shaolin temple opened with a bang. "Disperse!" someone's loud voice ordered. When the dust settled, a gang of armed men appeared in front of everyone, and in front of them was their leader. "Lord Niu is here! Hurry up and get out!" ordered a very frail, thin man. The entire back of his head was shaved, and only a circle of dirty, hanging hair remained on his head. Most likely, he played the role of chief secretary and assistant to the leader of the bandits. Walking out into the middle of the yard, the puny man set up a wooden chair, on which the leader immediately sat down, crossing his legs. He had 2 silver earrings in his right ear, and a red cloak was draped over his shoulders. When he sat down, he stuck his sword into the ground out of habit, since there was nowhere to put it. Only this time, there was tile instead of earth. From what he saw, Yi Jing's heart ached, because he had been saving for all these bricks for so long, telling stories. Although no, he bought the bricks with borrowed money. "Hey, listen carefully. To everyone in the Dengfen district who does business and makes money from it must pay me, Master Niu. You've told stories here before, so I think you earned about 100 taels of silver," said the leader. "Since Yiji is a monk, he will not force the young man. So why then doesn't he pay the money voluntarily? And the man also said that the monk will have to pay extra for some reason." As soon as the leader said everything he wanted, he fell silent, waiting for an answer. "Abbot, this so-called Master Niu is a simple martial arts instructor. His real name is Niu Air. He is Chen Jin's son-in-law and has basic knowledge of martial arts. This guy sitting on the chair is nothing, and the people around him are his disciples. They are all local. Fei-hun whispered into our hero's ear from behind. How many of these people did you have the opportunity to communicate with? The abbot of the temple asked him. With few, but besides New Heir, I have no opponents here. There are a lot of them now, so I think I can handle 3, but 5 at most. Fei-hun thought. Hey monk, I'm talking to you. Bring out the money obediently, then our master will forgive past mistakes. Without waiting for our hero's decision, the unshaven fellow shouted again. It was necessary to somehow get out of the current situation. With his hands folded on his chest, Yiji calmly and with a quiet gait approached the uninvited guests. The fact is that wine, lust, and wealth are sins, so the poor monk is advised to do good instead of evil. What goes around comes around, and what you do today may cause you suffering in your future reincarnations. The abbot began to read the notation. In fact, you can quickly put the knife away, repent to Buddha, and immediately leave so as not to face retribution, our hero suggested. He turned the gang leader's communication technique against him. And if necessary, Yuzi was even ready to fight because he could not pay the defense fee, because now he was investing in the future lands of the temple. Enough! Niu shouted, sputtering. Not wanting to endure it any longer, he grabbed his sword and pointed it straight at the monk's face. You're bald. What are you talking about? Are you going to pay the money or not? He asked, growling like a hyena. You want me to pay? What happens if I don't pay? The abbot wanted to find out the second option for the outcome of the situation. We are monks. Do we have at least a little compassion? Hong almost began to beg in a quiet, trembling voice. In contrast, Jing was in full swing preparing for the possible upcoming fight for the treasury of the Shaolin Temple, warming up. Big Brother Hong, such a person is always looking for the easiest way to make money. If you give in now, he will ask for more in the future. Fei Hong tried to reason with his older brother. For Niu, negotiations were the same as refusing to pay tribute. If you don't want to pay, then I will destroy your unfinished temple. And immediately began to wave his sword, as if giving a sign to act in his gang. Yiji barely managed to dodge the sharp blade of the weapon. How dare you threaten the abbot? Just because we are monks doesn't mean we won't fight. Brothers, let's defeat them. Our hero was not going to give in either. And then the guy with the unshaven head howled in pain. This is because Fei Hong gave him a huge slap in the face with his hand, which turned his head. Jing was also not inferior to his brother-in-law. Crouching, he tripped the enemy running towards him, and he, having lost his balance, began to dig the ground with his nose. And Hong, catching up with the bandits, began to press on the bandits' eye sockets with his index and middle fingers, thereby causing pain. But among all the bandits, Niu remained the strongest. Swinging his sword, he decided to attack the monk from a running start. The young man just sighed heavily. Why does the strongest go after him? And the only thing he felt sorry for now was the newly laid tiles. He realized that most likely the second bull wanted to cut off his head, and therefore stood in a waiting stance. Damn, I can't take it anymore. I'll kill this bald donkey now, the leader of the bandits promised, gritting his teeth with anger, raising his sword as high as possible. Master Abbot, those around them shouted, seeing how strong the enemy was. It seemed that, knowing that he was being attacked, Yijie should have tried to dodge, but he deliberately put his head under the sword. It seemed as if the weapon did not hit the head, but stone or concrete. The shockwave sent the sword flying away from its owner, and he plunged into the square, while the bandits barely had time to pick up their leader. Having repelled such a strong blow, our hero returned his breathing to normal with one breath. To say that Niu was shocked that the monk was stronger than him is to say nothing. You! Put down the knife and present yourself in front of the Buddha right now, otherwise this poor monk will have to start acting. Without hesitation, in a metallic voice, the abbot ordered the second bull. Looking into the eyes of the young man, the man's soul sank to his feet, shouting, "Monster!" He rushed away from the Shaolin Temple. "Boss, where are you going?" His beaten guys shouted. "Should I help you clean up, or will you do everything yourself?" Now Yijie turned to the remaining bandits. No, we will leave on our own. You don't need to do anything," the shaved guy babbled. "We won't worry about this anymore," the bandits promised as they ran out through the entrance gate of the temple. As soon as the last of them was out of sight, the builders and students began to admire the abbot. Wow, he is very strong. It was so cool. The Shadrinsky Temple is truly amazing. That was all that was heard from all sides. Master Abbot, you must be careful, because New Heir still has the support of Chen Jin. He is not someone you should mess with. Fei Hun advised, worried. In any case, It doesn't matter who supports him. I also have support. It's from Buddha, our hero said, as if not taking the words of the former clerk particularly seriously. Today, the day of the fight, was the 25th. A month has passed since he found himself in this world, which means that as soon as 12 o'clock strikes, he will be able to play the lottery. This lottery will determine whether he can cope with the future problems associated with the second bull gang. Finally, planet Earth turned sideways to the sun, and the moon shone in the sky with the stars. In the lame houses, only sweet snoring could be heard. Only Yiji did not sleep. At this moment, he confirmed the decision that he wants to use the lottery draw right now. This time, luck was very important. The Shaolin Temple has become very popular, and more garbage like new air will appear. If our hero cannot acquire high-quality martial arts equipment, then he can safely begin to immediately prepare for the worst. The young man stared thoughtfully at the screens of all systems. After 20 days of cultivation, his ability to take chi into his body became much stronger. If he can combine this with high technique, then what happened today will no longer happen. So far, luck has been on the side of our hero. But this time, everything will be connected with the Shaolin Temple, and he does not know whether luck will continue. But this time she did not let him down, since the prize turned out to be the lion's roar technique. Roaring is an iconic martial art from Shaolin. He can destroy such a sound with his sound attacks. It was just wonderful. Without wasting time, the monk pulled himself up to open the manual, but I changed my mind. At this point, it was midnight. If the young man used this technique in the temple, it would definitely cause a ruckus, so he decided to go to the back mountain. Having found a secluded place, he sat in the lotus position, ready to absorb knowledge. Lion's roar was one of the 72 tricks of Shaolin. Once used, the tongue explodes with thunder, and the sound waves can travel tens of miles. People nearby will be horrified when they hear this. If they don't have the internal strength to defend themselves, they will be killed by the huge sound waves. In severe cases, they bleed and die, and in the lungs their arms and legs will be broken. Having prepared himself, Yiji took a deep breath and used the technique. It was incredible. He just shouted a little, and there was an explosion. The consequences were terrible. Broken trees, after which suddenly there was silence. What can I say? Our hero himself was horrified by the power of technology, but he immediately had no time for this because he felt a sudden strong fatigue throughout his whole body. Unable to stand on his feet any longer, he fell to the ground. Although Yiji has obtained the full essence of a lion's roar, it does not mean that he can produce the strongest lion's roar, but perhaps the reason may be that his inner strength is too weak. If a young man does not learn this, he will certainly have problems. After resting a little, the monk slowly squatted down, intending to rest a little more and move back to the temple. "Who?" A voice suddenly sounded. It was not heard from any particular direction, it was heard everywhere. Suddenly, someone invisible jerked our hero up by the throat and squeezed his throat so hard that the young man could hardly breathe. "Who is this child who dares to bother the old man?" The unknown person continued to ask. The monk was horrified. Who is this master behind the mountain of the Shaolin Temple that he doesn't know about? But Yiji decided not to give up and therefore used the lion market technique. After a few seconds, not a trace of the evil spirit remained. But if this unknown person wanted to kill the abbot, he would have done it a long time ago, but he let him go. Perhaps it was a warning, or maybe the mysterious person cannot leave this place for some reason and is therefore intimidating. In any case, all this is too dangerous, and therefore Yijie must find a way to remove this unknown person from here. And only when he saw the walls of the Shaolin Temple around him, the young man finally calmed down. But he no longer had time to sleep, and therefore our hero went to the construction site. According to the plan, the Shaolin Temple can be divided into 4 parts. The first and second areas will contain the Bell Tower, Heaven Hall, Guanyin Hall, Vajra Hall, Mida Hall, Woito Hall, Manjushri Hall, Medicine Master Hall, 10 Reincarnation Halls, Main Hall, and other Buddhist halls. And the remaining rooms will be intended mainly for pilgrims and tourists. The third area will have the Inner Shaolin Temple, which includes the Jai Hall, dormitories, Arhat Hall, Bodhi Hall, Prajna Hall, Dharma Hall, and Martial Arts Field. Thinking, Yijie calmly walked around the territory belonging to the temple. Having come to the conclusion that this was the only way to do it, the young man pulled a token from his bosom, which was one of the prizes in the Wheel of Happiness. Regarding the 4th area, the monk needs to rely specifically on the manifestation of the Buddha. As always, The system first asked him if he was really sure that he wanted to use the 10,000 steps building token. After an affirmative agreement, the token began to slowly collapse, as if it was itself breaking into dozens of small pieces in the palms of our hero. A little more, and the particles from the token seemed to turn into falling stars, which schematically began to fall to the ground. Along with the penetration of the token particles into the ground, they began to build a building on their own. What he saw took the monk's breath away. It was a real miracle. The building looked like a high tower. In each wall on each floor, there was a window from which light poured. This is the treatment given to the Son of Heaven. It's a shame that I was just afraid of the mysterious man on the mountain, because how can he compare to me? Looking at all the splendor, Abad chided himself. Gathering his courage, he pushed the entrance door to the tower, which is a pagoda. On the first floor alone, there were 1,500 large and small Buddha statues. The second floor was similar to the first, except that the central Buddha statue became a bodhisattva. Having examined the first and second floors, the young man continued to climb the stairs. All the other 8 floors contained more than 100,000 Buddha statues. On the last, 10th floor, Yiji looked out the window on the eastern side of the tower and met the dawn. The pagoda was erected on the ground in one night. Such a miracle will definitely increase the number of believers in the Shaolin Temple. With a good, strong base, it will be much easier to recruit students in the future. Looking at the rays of the sun, our hero smiled contentedly. Now he is one step closer to completing the task, and therefore, to freedom. At this time, Disciple Jing looked up from his sweet bed. Coming out into the air, he began to stretch, driving away the sleep. Brothers, it's time for us to wake up. He started to wake up the others, but then I instantly woke up completely. Master Abbot, we came to listen to your lectures. At the entrance gate to the temple, there was again a crowd of people waiting for Yijie to finally come out. But when they raised their heads to the sky, they froze in amazement. Rarely have commoners seen a building higher than 4 floors. But here, there are 10. Without saying a word, people decided that this was a real miracle in which Buddha himself appeared. And falling to their knees, they began to ask for the Buddha's blessing. Please bless my boy, who entered high school this year, asked a man in patched clothes. Bless me, Buddha. I want to find a good man, begged the pretty girl. Bless my wife, Buddha. May she give birth to our child safely, the young man asked with tears in his eyes. The effect of building the pagoda exceeded our hero's expectations. Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. The monk greeted the visitors from the 10th floor of the building. Master Abbot, this is a real miracle, right? The crowd exclaimed in response to his greeting. But instead of a verbal answer, the monk jumped onto the windowsill in one leap and rushed down. Before reaching the ground in the air, he did about 5 different somersaults. The hearts of the visitors were filled with fear. Of course, because in front of them, a person is about to fall to his death. With his hands folded to his chest, our hero landed head down. His head was stuck a couple of centimeters into the broken tile. Brother Abbot, what is happening here? Jing asked, smiling from ear to ear, approaching the monk. As soon as Yiji returned to a vertical position, he immediately began to explain himself. Recently, Buddha visited my dream and said that he was touched by the sincerity of the Shaolin Temple, and because of this he would create a miracle. Well, these 10 steps, that is, the building that you see in front of you, are proof, he said. A miracle that Buddha himself performed. Abbot, please let us visit the miracle of Buddha. Yes, let's come in and take a look, the crowd exclaimed. Calm down, Buddha gave me an order. This tower of 10,000 steps can only bless 10,000 families, so if you truly believe in Buddha, you can visit this tower. Everyone else can only watch and burn their incense outside the tower. Our hero ordered. He was worried that if too many people entered the tower, it might collapse. Moreover, in order to make money, Yiji needs to rely on this pagoda, while he can let people in for free. People began to whisper among themselves. They were not sure whether this wish of the Buddha was true. Suddenly one girl asked a question. Abbot, tell me how to please Buddha. Meanwhile, the day was already approaching noon. On each Buddha statue, the abbot of the Shaolin Temple wrote something like an autograph with a small knife. The figurine itself with the entrance to the tower cost 5 taels of silver. In general, worshippers could pay 100 taels of silver and gain access to all rooms. However, not all visitors had that kind of money. There were 2 men in the queue. They were not as simple as at first glance. Uncle, I checked everything. Yesterday they came to Shaolin to take tribute, but after the abbot scared away the villains, he told everyone that Buddha would soon appear. As a result, this tower appeared here overnight, and this is the absolute truth. A young man told another man. He was so young that his beard had not yet touched his chin. The second man was Shangguan Xiong. He, like his companion, was dressed in simple clothes, had a black mustache like a raven's wing, and hair tied back in a ponytail, and his eyes resembled the gaze of a falcon. This little Shaolin temple should really be grateful to Buddha. Have you checked this abbot? Xiong asked. Yes, uncle. This abbot's name is Yiji. He has been in the Shaolin temple since childhood. When his master died, power passed to him, and he also has an older and younger brother, the boy reported. Next, Xiong inquired about martial arts, but it turned out that the Shaolin temple is unknown in the world of martial arts, so little is known about it. But didn't you say that new heir is ready to attack at any time? Go and stir up a conflict between him and the abbot so that New will test all his capabilities, Shangguan ordered, narrowing his eyes. Under his gaze, the boy had no choice but to go carry out the order. But before he could move even a couple of steps, Xiong stopped him. Remember that you must assign someone to secretly guard this abbot. If he can really communicate with Buddha, that is too important to me, the man asked. And at the entrance to the pagoda, the line still did not end. Mr. Abbot, here are 5 taels of silver to ask the Buddha to bless my family with peace and quiet, the visitor reported. If you are sincere, Buddha will hear you. Yiji gave him hope. While the next visitor was approaching him, the monk ran his eyes over the crowd of people, and there he noticed the second bull, New Heir. It was not difficult to recognize him. The same red cape, 2 gold rings in his ear. This guy was in the crowd and was probably just waiting for the opportunity to take revenge on our hero. Alternatively, the monk can knock out all the villains with his lion wine roar. But since there are so many inhabitants here, he will have to find another way to get rid of the ill-wishers. Thanks to his flexibility of mind and charisma, a solution was found almost immediately. People, the Shaolin Temple is blessed by the Buddha and will continue to show miracles in the future. The monk began to address the crowd. But there are people who want to destroy Shaolin, make Buddha hate this place, to which they have repeatedly come and are coming to the temple to cause harm. By doing this, they are not only the enemies of our Shaolin, but the enemies of everyone. Think about it, friends. You are here at the 10,000 Buddha pagoda, visiting or worshipping the Buddha. But these people want to destroy Shaolin. Once they succeed and the pagoda disappears, then all the money will be gone and Buddha will not bless the place. The abbot raised the morale of Buddhist adherents. Do you think we can tolerate such behavior? After some encouragement, our hero asked the people. No, protect the pagoda, protect the Shaolin temple. The crowd began to shout and insist. Here they are, the gang of the second bull from Dongfeng. Although Buddha is merciful, we should teach the evildoers a lesson, Yiji shouted to everyone, pointing at Niu. Only the man didn't expect to be recognized. Protect the pagoda, protect the Shaolin temple. Teach the wicked a lesson. Like a battle cry, the crowd repeated over and over again. As soon as the second bull was revealed, temple visitors immediately rushed towards him in a crowd. First, a brick flew into his face, and then all New Heir could do was groan and call for help, because there were many who wanted to beat him. It looks like the mass path is the right solution. This way, not only can you hide your strength, but it is useful for the future recruitment of students into Shaolin, thought our hero while watching the beating of his opponent. When everyone calmed down, Yiji noticed 2 men to the side who clearly wanted something from him and were waiting for an opportunity to cross paths with him. It was Shangguan Xiong and his assistant. Let me meet the abbot of Shaolin. Xiong was the first to greet, folding his hands to his chest. Looking at him, the monk noticed that this man's aura was unusual. There is a clear division of power above the Jianhu, usually divided into Hutian masters and Hutian innate masters. It is further divided into early stage, middle stage, and late stage, followed by the great completion of Hutian. The early Hutian stage refers to the cultivation of the discipline of internal energy and the sense of qi, which is considered to have entered the Hutian realm. Middle Hutian refers to cultivating internal energy to a certain level of achievement, that is, reaching a point where internal energy can pass through the meridians and travel throughout the body. At this time, Attacks using any part of the body supported by internal energy can cause great damage. In later stages, the internal energy can radiate outside the body so that people can sense it clearly. For example, when internal energy pours into the eyes so that people do not dare to look at them, or for example, when a person waves his sleeve, a wave of ki comes out of him, or when a person pours internal energy into his sword, and when he swings, sword ki appears. The perfection of Huqian means that the achievement of internal energy has reached the realm of minor success, and at this time, the internal energy can be reset, reaching the realm of returning to the basics. Xiong's gaze was like a torch, so he's at least a late Hutian master, but our hero doesn't know if he's an enemy or a friend. While the abbot of the temple was in confusion, Shangguan invited the abbot to talk with him in the room. Yijie wondered, perhaps the man is a Buddhist or wants to become a monk, and that's why he showed up in Shaolin. Xiong and our hero sat down near the Buddha statue, while the man's assistant stood guard at the door. I came uninvited to talk to the abbot, Shangguan said. I'm sorry that I have to welcome you here. The monk answered him, I'm a simple man in the street with a small fortune, so I am not worthy of the word guest of honor. The visitor was modest. If you came to Shaolin to find me, and you have to hide your identity, then you are not liberal enough. Yiji said directly, not believing this man. Then what does the abbot see him? Asked Shangguan. If I'm not mistaken, then I think that you are from the army, the monk suggested. The man did not expect such a quick revelation of his personality, and accidentally gave vent to his emotions. Master, what is this murderous aura? What it is? What's happening? Sensing something was wrong, the assistant standing at the door burst into the room, but Xiong stopped him with a gesture. If I were not sure that I had never seen the abbot before, I am afraid I would doubt his identity. The man summed up, looking straight into the monk's eyes. Of course, he never saw our hero, he just accidentally revealed it. But since Yiji already realized that Shangguan was from the army, he decided not to hide this fact. Only this time, I really came to the abbot for something. The father of one of my friends believed in Buddhism to the point of obsession all his life and strove to have something with Buddha nature in his life. For this reason, the old man traveled all over the world and spent a huge amount of money, but could not get what he wanted for many years. A few days ago, I heard the servants talking about how a miracle of Buddha appeared in the Shaolin temple, and since I was here on official business, I came to visit the abbot. I came to visit the abbot in the hope that I could obtain something of Buddha nature to help my friend's father fulfill his wish, which would be a good deed. Xiong told the reason for his visit. It is not difficult, but if you believe in Buddha, you should personally come to our temple to show your sincerity, advised the monk. He really didn't want to deal with the government, especially the military, because he is for peace and order. But if he does not agree to the man's request, Shangguan may not back down. Since our hero cannot resist yet, it is better to make friends first. I have a request. I hope that the abbot will allow me to see something of Buddha nature so that I can have an idea of what to expect and ask the old man to return, asked the military man. This would be very good for Yijie. Taking out a fish gong, he explained to the visitor that he himself was depressed, so he asked him to listen to the sound and calm his mind. As soon as the last note of the striking gong died down, Shangguan found himself in another world. He stood on the edge of the shore near the waterfall and was surrounded by a dozen beautiful, half-naked girls, playing musical instruments and pouring out the most wonderful music from under their fingers. But it was just a fleeting vision. Abbot, is this really the power of Buddha's nature? Shun asked, enchanted by the haze he saw, and he promised that if he ever left his official duties, he would come to Shaolin and stay with the Buddha for a long time. As a farewell, Yiji decided to give him a souvenir, a string of beads, which, according to him, he personally enlightened. Shangguan happily thanked the abbot. Please go back and ask the old man to come to Shaolin. The monk asked goodbye, after which they parted. Heading towards the exit from the temple grounds, Shangguan replayed what had happened in his head over and over again. He said his name, and the young abbot remained unperturbed. This means that what they say about him is true, that he is an unusual person. And our hero, looking after the visitors, could not remember where he heard the name Shangguan Xiong. Having thought about the situation, he came to the conclusion that if he wants to achieve the respect of officials, then he will still have to improve his own strength and the strength of Shaolin. Otherwise, if he meets an unreasonable person, all his efforts will be in vain. Yiji had been in this completely new world for more than a month and participated in 3 lotteries. In April, at the festival, and in the May lottery. There is still a whole month until the next draw. So the young man needs to diligently practice his skill during this time in order to avoid a situation like yesterday, when he used the lion's roar once and all his internal energy was depleted. Now Shaolin has gained some fame, and it is expected that after a while, even more people will come to the pagoda, and the temple can use this opportunity to recruit disciples. A few days later, an announcement was made. The Shaolin Temple, located in the forest on the Shaoxi Mountains, hence its name, is fortunate to receive the blessing of the Buddha, who sends down a pagoda of merit and virtue to bless the people. The abbot of this temple, Master Yiji, listened to the Buddha's decree, followed the will of heaven, and saved all living beings, wanting to promote the temple and recruit disciples. People read out loud on a poster hanging on the gates of the temple. The news caused extraordinary excitement among the people. Everyone wanted to become a student, and young girls who wanted to quickly find good husbands, and old men who were left skin to bone. The rules for admission were as follows. Male students were recruited between the ages of 10 and 25. They may or may not have a family. They had to be healthy and have a strong character. Those who show results will be able to become Shaolin students and learn martial arts. Students will be required to attend morning classes every 3 days. After entering Shaolin, the master will teach the Buddhist Lotus Dharma and will also teach the martial arts boxing Fuhu. Does Shaolin teach martial arts? Do they know them? The young man asked his friend. Of course. Did you see what the master did last time? His friend answered him. But people, in anticipation of becoming a student of the Shaolin Temple, were looking for their own benefit. Someone was interested in whether free food would be given to someone, respect, and someone wanted to find shelter. The registration was carried out by Huang Fei Hong. He was still a clerk in the past. The first test was plausible data. What's most interesting is that even the girls playing with dolls also hoped that they would be accepted. The second test was physical training. In the third test, patience was tested. In general, at the beginning more than 100 people signed up, and after 3 tests only 3 or 4 remained. But in fact there is not one left. Yiji was willing to use some tricks to test the will of the young men. For example, throwing a piece of garbage on the ground, 2 coins, food, or something else. But he did not expect that no one would actually pass all the checks. While the monk was thinking about what to do next, suddenly the temple gates opened with a whistle, letting in a cool wind. All 5, Eyes, Jing, Hong, Fei Hong, and Zhen turned at once to the gate. Opposite the entrance arch, a Belgian tiger stood with sparkling blue eyes and hissing breath. Close the door now, our hero ordered without falling into a stupor. Obeying his decree, Hong and Jing on both inner sides of the gate leaned with all the weight of their bodies so as not to let the dangerous animal inside. Yiji joined in after them, but this tiger was too big. Although he has inner strength, his actual combat power is very small even with the help of others. However, after a while the guys felt that the pressure on the outside of the gate had weakened. For some reason, the tiger retreated. While the rector of the temple was thinking, for some reason such an unexpected guest showed up. A hand with short black nails reached through the gap between the doors, and a man 1.5 times taller than him appeared before Yiji. He could easily be called a mountain of muscles. His shirt was the top part of a stuffed Belgian tiger, and on his belt, instead of decoration, he wore the skull of a young goat. But if a living Belgian tiger belongs to this giant, then it is better to deal with him than with an animal. Why did you come to the Shaolin Temple? I try not to show excitement in my voice and ask the abbot. Madam, the doors of the temple are still open. We arrived on time. Don't pay any attention to the monk's question. The giant turned to someone. He never expected the person our hero saw. The last rays of the sun reflected in her eyes. Turning them purple white curls fell to her knees, and a black veil covered the lower part of her face. Her clothes were made of expensive fabrics, and all the jewelry hanging on the girl was made of gold. Move away! Don't you see that the lady is coming? Screamed a teenage girl standing next to a beautiful stranger and stroking a Belgian tiger. But unlike the girl, she was dressed more modestly. However, her feisty personality left much to be desired. What's going on here? Asked the taken-aback Jitkli of the Shaolin Temple. Hey, what's wrong with you monks? Can't you see that Our Lady is here to worship Buddha? Get out of the way, the impudent girl ordered, pointing her index finger at the men. The temple will close soon, so if you have come to offer incense, please come early tomorrow. Hong answered the visitors without any embarrassment. Shut up, why are you so annoying? It is a blessing that Our Lady has come here to offer incense. The girl answered him, shouting, and Hong could only be amazed at the girl's eloquence. "If you continue to babble, you may be bitten by fangs," she threatened. "Xiao Kui, your words are becoming more and more delusional." The girl stopped the girl, and she asked whether there was an abbot among the 5 masters who appeared before the day. "Madam, I am the rector of the temple." Yiji stepped forward. Just the sound of her voice made his heart happy. Isn't this the magic of beauty? Although our hero did not see her face in full, he was sure that something beautiful must be hidden under the veil. "Mr. Superior, please forgive me for allowing myself to come here at this time, but there are too many visitors here during the day, and since I always liked silence and which of your temples, I didn't know when it would close." The young lady apologized. "I don't blame you for not knowing, so please don't apologize. The abbot asked me to let him into the temple." However, the tiger standing behind the girl continued to stare at the monk. "Miss, wait!" Tsui shouted. She was worried about the safety of her mistress, and therefore suggested that Iron Bull and Da Huang should go in first and check if there was an ambush in the temple. "Xiao Kui, don't be rude." The mysterious visitor scolded the girl again. "Allowing a big man with a tiger to prowl inside the Shaolin temple is an insult to Shaolin," Abbot Hong said from behind. "Sorry, but if you think that Shaolin is a place where you can hide evil intent and you want to search the temple, then please leave," our hero declared, supporting his older brother in faith. The monks did not see, but under the black veil the girl smiled. The courage of the young abbot who actually dared to stop the Iron Bull and Da Huang made her slightly amused. The giant man clenched his fists in anger. "Young monk, how dare you stop me, the Iron Bull? You are really crazy." "Yes, Huan, go ahead, show him what you can do," he ordered the tiger. The girl didn't even have time to react in any way to stop the animal, but the tiger, standing on its hind legs, was already preparing to attack. Yiji was seriously angry at the uninvited guests. "This is Shaolin dignity, how can it be violated?" he said in a quiet but at the same time loud voice, after which he immediately used the lion market technique. Of course, not at full power, but the tiger's body, deafened for some time by the sound waves, went limp in fear. And the Iron Bull, that is the nickname that the giant man had, could barely stand on his feet. Actually, like the lady and her little assistant, the stranger could not believe that the young abbot was so strong. However, like the Shaolin masters, and our hero immediately calmed down with one breath. In contrast, the giant with one sigh became even more angry. He insulted the abbot of the Shaolin temple. He rushed to him in order to forcefully show him his place. But then his mistress's hand appeared in front of him, gesturing to stop. The Iron Bull looked at her with confusion. "Abbot, I apologize and hope that you will forgive my recklessness." The stranger apologized. "It's okay." Yiji pretended as if nothing had happened, noting that if earlier there was only superficial politeness on the girl's part, this time there really was a hint of respect for him. Having folded her hands and bowed together to Xiao Kui, the young lady again asked permission to enter the temple to put incense. Hearing her plea, our hero stepped aside, allowing her to enter the temple territory. First, they entered the first level of the statue of the goddess of dripping water. Walking leisurely through the Yiji pagoda, he decided to give the girl a short tour. If the young man's memory did not fail him, then in the previous world, the popularity of Guanyin Bodhisattva in Buddhism was almost comparable to the popularity of the Buddha, known as Great Compassion, eliminating suffering and having hundreds of millions of followers. Although Buddhism in the world it was in at the moment is not as thriving as in the previous one, the popularity of Guanyin Bodhisattva is still very high. But the stranger just looked at the statue, as if showing with her appearance that she did not worship Guanyin, and went upstairs. Next, this young woman of charity brought her respects from the dripping goddess of mercy on the 1st floor to Buddha Rudra on the 8th floor, but still did not find the Buddha whom she wants to worship. Looking at the girl, it was not difficult to tell that she was rich, and the monk was sure that ultimately she could bring a lot of money to the temple. Finally, Yiji and the mysterious stranger went up to the 9th floor. Place it in front of the gilded statue of Namo Buddha Amitabha, and she spoke. "Today you accompanied me to the pagoda, so I hope that the abbot will keep my situation and what I said a secret," the visitor asked. "Please speak," the monk answered her, and then the girl dared to take off her veil. Yiji was not mistaken. Under the black cloth, there was an incredibly beautiful face. Correct proportions, plump lips and cheeks, chiseled chin and cheekbones. Only now tears were flowing from her eyes. Seeing the beauty of the stranger, the abbot was almost speechless. Having bought sticks of incense, the young lady lit them, but the traces of tears on her cheeks did not dry. Fortunately, Our hero managed to see the world, so he did not lose his composure. Otherwise, he would have been very embarrassed. However, this was the first time in his life that he had seen such a beautiful woman. She couldn't even be compared to those big stars in the last days of the world. She was so beautiful. Ignoring the monk, the girl knelt down in front of the statue of Buddha Amitabha and began to pray to him. Believing daughter Ningwanjun, I sincerely pray to the Buddha to bless my father for a speedy recovery. I know that my father's injuries are very serious, but he still holds on so that no one can see his pain. He remained in this position, which, in my opinion, meant nothing, but he could not leave because he wanted to forget how my mother died. The girl asked. Yiji thought that most likely the visitor was born only with her father in the family. My father thought that his sorrows would go away if he started practicing martial arts, but the villains overpowered him at once and forced him to study evil skills. When I saw him the other day, his hair turned white. Nin continued to pray. Listening to her prayer, the abbot tried to follow her thought. He did not understand what evil skill was, and even more so, he did not understand who this girl was. This is so scary, Buddha. A believing woman is so scared. What should she do? I have lived with my father since childhood, and I don't want him to leave me. And I also don't want him to become a person who makes me feel like a stranger, and I'm scared. I have no way to convince my father. He simply does not want to listen to other opinions. What should I do? Having heard about the miracle of Buddha, the faithful daughter specially came here to ask for guidance. Buddha of supreme wisdom, please show me the path, please. Buddha, save my dad. The visitor, shuddering from sobs, barely had time to pronounce the words. After such a prayer, even our unemotional hero almost began to cry. He understood that he needed to somehow help the girl to at least calm down from her grief, but he didn't know how. The solution was found quite quickly. The chi energy gradually began to approach his head. Listen, madam. He turned to the girl, who was already overwhelmed by low sound waves. For a second, the young lady stopped crying in surprise. Please listen to my words. Stand up and speak. Yitze continued to reassure her. He actually used a small amount of lion's roar, which actually stopped her crying. Sorry, I lost control of myself. Ning stood up from her knees, wiping her wet cheeks. Listen. There are 7 sufferings in life, which include all types of human suffering. The abbot began a sincere conversation. Essentially, psychotherapy. Could you, abbot, enlighten me? What are these 7 sufferings? The visitor asked. By labor pains, we mean the cramped and unpleasant conditions inside the mother's womb, continuous breathing, cold wind and clothing after birth, as well as cutting of the skin. The suffering of old age, when a person grows old and becomes mentally exhausted and weak. Suffering from illnesses, when the body hurts and there is no peace. Suffering from death, when a person's life is cut short due to aging, or when he dies in an accident. Suffering from resentment and hatred, when the heart is filled with them, and when the desired is not fulfilled, but causes harm. It often happens that people are too fixated on what they want. They are very often too persistent and find themselves locked in a cage, unwilling to give up, which adds to their suffering. Shared his knowledge of the sacred scriptures of Yiji. At first the girl was silent, pondering what she had heard. I think the master is right. In many moments the noble maiden is too obsessed, but in many ways she cannot help herself. I ask the abbot to initiate me regarding the last suffering. The visitor asked, almost calming down. It turned out that the last suffering is the suffering of parting. There is no greater pain in life than the pain of love and separation. When a loved one leaves, there is nothing we can do about it. And when a loved one is not with us, the pain of longing for him remains. But Lady Ning is not yet old enough to feel the pain of not having her loved one by her side. But the abbot is sure that despite her age, she has already experienced this herself. At his words, the girl began to cry again. Our hero could not find a place for himself out of despair. Why did she start crying again? If such a situation had happened in his past life, he would have gladly put his shoulder to it. But now there was no such option. Resentment and hatred, desire and inability to live, old age and death, love and separation. These are the most famous words that I heeded, abbot. It is said on the outside that you are the one who can communicate with the Buddha, so I can only ask you, please teach me what should I do now. Having barely managed to calm down for the second time, The young lady asked for advice. And again this evening, our hero did not know what to do and what to do. Without showing it at first, he asked the girl to sit down by the statue as if gaining time. After all, how can he teach someone with his half-forgotten knowledge of Buddhist scriptures? And he can only use the lion's roar trick once. Fortunately, Yiji had a fish gong because this treasure always helps people in anxious moments. Just sit and listen to the monk tapping to calm your mind and maybe you can think things through, he explained. What can just one melody do? Ning was surprised by Abbot Ning's action. Instead of answering, the monk struck the gong. Before the girl had time to come to her senses, she found herself in an endless field full of fragrant flowers. Butterflies fluttered here and there and birds sang. The sound she heard was so warm that it seemed like it could cleanse her soul. Full of bliss, she sank onto the grass, playing with flower petals with her fingers. She had the feeling that what happened to her father was not so sad. A certainty arose in her soul that she would find a solution, if only she did not rush. But everything in the world begins and ends. Soon she had to return to this world. Why did I just fall asleep? The girl asked loudly, opening her heavy eyelids with difficulty. How do you feel? Yiji asked. The visitor looked at the monk with eyes full of life. She thought that perhaps the abbot had some kind of ability, or knew some secret. Abbot, I don't know how you did it, but thanks to your instructions, I received enlightenment, Mrs. Nina said. You exaggerated my capabilities. I just helped you think through and let go of your experiences. You should know that when fate closes a door on you, it also opens a window for you somewhere in the corner. The monk gave advice again. Suddenly the girl took the young man's palms into her own. I understand. Now I understand everything. I won't return to my father yet, but I'm sure he'll figure it out, she said. Why are you shaking my hands? I know that I am handsome and attractive, but I am the abbot of Shaolin. I can't take such actions. EJ held back and thought about what was happening, while the girl realized that the young monk was not impressed by her beauty trick. Abbot, the mistress of the faith, planned to give Shaolin a sum of money for incense, no matter how things turned out. This is not much, but it is enough for several people to survive for 8 or 10 years. The owner of Beautiful Eyes told about her good deed. Yiji did not expect such good news at the end of the day. Thank you very much. He began to thank the visitor for the donation. But after the girl's words that now she doesn't dare think like that. An instant donut. And naturally, I asked about the reason for the change of opinion. Although I am a daughter, I know that money and other worldly things are like floating clouds for the owner. Even if there were mountains of gold and silver piled up in front of you, I'm afraid you wouldn't even look at it, because it would be a desecration of the abbot and the pure Shaolin land if I repaid the abbot with these gold and white things. Mrs. Ning explained her position on moral qualities. Listen to her, our hero cried. Because he believed that money is actually not an ordinary thing, and without money everything will turn into a cloud, and he would not just look at the mountain of gold and silver, but also take it in his hands. He was offended that this girl took him for the high priest, and thought that he did not like gold and silver things. But the monk still owes the money he borrowed for a while. I regret that I bothered the abbot for so long, but now I'm calm. Perhaps I will speak frankly, abbot. When I arrived, I saw announcements for lay disciples on the doors of the church. I wonder if the Shaolin abbot is recruiting students, the evening visitor asked, and she began to look so tenderly with her beautiful eyes at the young man that anyone in his place would have melted under her gaze. But the abbot had no time for this. The very thought of taking a girl as a student aroused conflicting feelings in him. Women believers can find a place to stay at the foot of the mountain and come to Shaolin whenever it is time for morning classes and martial arts practice. The young woman continued to insist. But Yijie shook his head decisively. No, the Shaolin temple does not accept female students. This is an iron rule that cannot be broken. Can sound really purify a person to the point of converting to Buddhism? Our hero wondered out loud, denying the possibility of accepting students. Having just heard the abbot's sound, I would like to stay next to the Buddha for a long time. I am very sorry that the abbot did not allow me to do this. But then, instead of me, let the Iron Bull remain in Shaolin as a student, so that I can make my contribution to the development of Shaolin, Mrs. Ning suggested. What? Iron Bull? The giant man at the door? Thought the monk. He made a mistake by underestimating this young woman. The girl had just lulled his vigilance by showing her true feelings, and now when she came to her senses, she figured him out. It is quite possible that this expression on her face is part of some kind of calculation. At first, she said that she wanted to stay in Shaolin, knowing full well that nothing would work out for her. But she still talked about it in order to force this Iron Bull to stay in Shaolin, since our hero had already refused her once. It would be bad to refuse her a second time. This is also a common negotiation tactic used in shopping malls in more recent times. But why then did the visitor do this? Does she really want to contribute to the development of Shaolin, as she puts it? All beings have Buddha nature. Shaolin has always opened its doors for convenience. This is great if your person wants to stay in Shaolin. But first, he must pass the Shaolin test. The monk recalled the conditions of reception. "Thank you, Abbot. Iron Bull is a good man, so test it for strength," asked the young woman. Having discussed the nuances, the two of them left the temple. "What? Does Iron Bull want to stay here?" Xiao Kui screamed when she heard the unexpected news. "Please, Abbot, forgive me for the noise." Mrs. Ning apologized for her overly emotional assistant. "Why should we leave the Iron Bull? He's stupid. Why don't we find someone smart and reliable at the main altar?" The girl asked the reason for this decision of the hostess. "The Iron Bull may be stupid, but he is a sincere person. I'm sure it will serve well." She answered the assistant's question with a smile on her face. The girl believed that precisely because Tai Nu is stupid, he is the best person for this job, and smart people would definitely be a bad candidate. Even when the girl showed her real face in the pagoda, she did not cause the Shaolin abbot the slightest change in mood. The poor monk also believes in the sincerity of the Iron Bull's desire to serve the Buddha. Tomorrow, he can join the others in the exam for Shaolin Temple lay disciples. Yiji greeted the future candidate. He himself began to wonder what the purpose of this young woman was. Since she decided to force Tinyu to stay in the Shaolin Temple, is there some secret related to the temple? At first glance, it seems that there is no kung fu, but the roar in front of the mountain gate is clearly the roar of a Buddhist lion that has reached a very high level. Such a skill may not be competent, Madame Ning thought. She left the Iron Bull on purpose, because if she left the smart one, the abbot would be wary, and it would be impossible to carry out the tasks she needed. In the girl's actions, our hero noticed a clear desire to hesitate. Let the tiger go into the forest in order to come to the rescue in time if the Shaolin Temple needs it. The young woman ordered the animal, on whose lap the girl stood, playing with him. Tsoi was upset that she would have to leave the tiger. What if he doesn't have enough food or sleep if he stays here in the forest? And anyway, why should the Iron Bull remain in the temple? Suddenly, enlightenment descended on her head. Exactly. The tiger is the best at finding things. It turns out that the lady is so smart, she left the Iron Bull openly in the Shaolin Temple, and in the dark asked Da Huang to look for the right person. At parting, Tsoi ruffled her pet's fur for the last time. Her smile reminded Yiji of the grin of an embittered man. Not noticing the thoughtful look of the young abbot, the girl said goodbye to the tiger, and the animal in the blink of an eye disappeared into the thick of greenery and trees, and the visitors and the monk were still talking. "Master Abbot, the faithful lady has always wondered in her heart, does the abbot want to know Wanjun's true identity?" the young woman asked, fingering the beads on the bracelet. "What about the Son of Heaven? In the eyes of my Buddha, all beings are equal. The girl's status may be noble, but everything is in the eyes of the poor monk, are equal." Yiji answered her without hesitation. Mrs. Min liked his answer. When she and her assistant said goodbye to the inhabitants of the temple, it was already deep night. Having moved to a safe distance where no one would see them, they used chi energy to fly up a tree, after which they continued on their way. Looking after them, our hero thought. The girl was beautiful, knew martial arts, had power and status. She has a tiger as a pet, but she also has a father who practices evil intent. So the young man concluded that she is an unrighteous person. But that was not all. The main verdict was that most likely the evening visitor is a disciple of demons. The next day, the Shaolin Temple continued to recruit students, and Iron Bull was among the applicants after passing the tests after everyone else. If the giant succeeds in passing the last test of character, then he will be able to become a Shaolin lay disciple. Unlike yesterday, today after several rounds of tests, surprisingly there were a dozen people who reached the last level in the test. The last round of testing was ahead, and it took place in a pagoda built with the help of a token donated by the system. Gentlemen, the last test will begin in half an hour. During this time you can move around freely, but you're not allowed to leave the first level of 10,000 Buddha pagoda. In half an hour you will meet near me. Now you can relax, declared Yijie as a contender for the title of Shaolin disciple. The half-hour break delighted the participants beyond words. They all scattered around the first floor. Someone began to pray to the Buddha statue, and someone found a mate and had a discussion with her. At this time, our hero was watching them all, sitting on a wooden chair. A couple of minutes later, Tai Nhu approached him and did not take a single step away from him. "Iron Bull, why don't you take a walk? The time has not yet come." The monk turned to him. "I will be here to protect the abbot if anything happens." The man answered him. "You have to protect me. Don't you think I'm capable of defending myself?" As always, our hero was straightforward. "You seem to have some skills, but I still have to protect you. That's what the lady said." Tai contradicted him, and I thought to myself, even if a strong body receives a lion's roar, it will not be able to remain unharmed. So now you are pretending to be calm. The man barely had time to object to the abbot before he was horrified, since our hero was again about to use the lion's roar technique. But he just decided to intimidate the Iron Bull. "Go for a walk," the monk repeated again. Since Tai Nhu wanted to work under him in the future, he must be obedient enough whether he listened to the mistress or the elder sister before. But in the Shaolin temple, a man must obey the abbot. Realizing that the abbot was not to be trifled with, the Iron Bull hurried to retreat deeper into the hall. It was lying in the corner, no one noticed it, a copper coin. But soon, attention was paid to her. This person turned out to be one of the possible future students. First he looked back, making sure that no one was watching him. He picked up the coin, put it in his pocket, and pretended that nothing had happened. But he was mistaken. Huang Feihong was watching him intently from behind a column. Finally, half an hour passed. "Time's up, please. Bow down for a moment." E.G. called all the guys, after which he declared the exam for the recruitment of Shaolin lay disciples officially completed. "What?" the participants asked in one voice. They could be understood, because how could the last test end before it even started? Shaolin is a Buddhist sect, and the first thing a Buddhist sect pays attention to when choosing a disciple is the person's heart, and the last test was the heart. The abbot began to explain. It turned out that he specially placed a total of 120 copper coins on the floor throughout the hall. During the break, everyone found copper plates alone or together, but everyone behaved differently, and in fact, only 2 people passed the test. This was the Iron Bull, whose name was Ti Nhu. Yes, a beggar boy named Su. The abbot took 1 copper coin from his pocket and looked at it closely for some time. Collecting gold is a kind of benefactor. We distribute gold to help those in need and do good. Don't think that a simple coin is a small thing. Don't think of evil as a small thing. Don't think of good as a small thing. Accumulate good to bring down evil. Accumulate evil to bring down good. Think about it and go home. The monk let everyone go in peace after the instructions. A sigh of regret was heard throughout the hall. It was the young people who reproached themselves for their greed, which is why they missed this opportunity to enter the temple. But they themselves were to blame for this. This is the first disciple of Shaolin and Huang Feihong, your elder brother. The remaining rector introduced the former clerk to the twins. "My name is Iron Bull." Tai Nhu bowed and introduced himself. "My name is Boy Su." The beggar introduced himself. "You will become Shaolin students. But after you come with me to pay respect to your ancestors," our hero promised, heading towards the exit of the pagoda. The students agreed and followed him. On the way to the desired location, Yiji asked why the second student was called the Boy Su. "I grew up as a beggar, always asking for food. Nobody gave me a name, so everyone called me Su or Boy Su," the teenager answered. The fact that he was from a lower class was immediately obvious. Shabby clothes with patches on patches, and an eternally dirty body with greasy hair. "Being a beggar and at the same time being able to pick up money is not bad," the abbot remarked, patting the boy on the shoulder in a friendly manner. "Today I will give you the worldly name, Su Qiang, which means a bright future." Our hero gave the name to the young man. The brown eyes of the former homeless man filled with tears, and he fell on his knees before his mentor. "Thank you, Mr. Abbot. I now have a name." "Thank you very much, Abbot," he thanked. "Get up. From now on, you will be a Shaolin student, and not a lonely beggar." Our hero extended his hand to him. "Thank you." The boy smiled. Having climbed to the top of the mountain, all 4 began to pray earnestly. But Yiji only pretended to pray. In fact, he was going through memories. Although he had never actually met the abbot, the young man inherited the memories of the first ring from the previous owner, and a deep impression of Zhuanhai remained in his memory. The young man owed his mastery of martial arts to this abbot. But he also loved his student and wanted Yiji to achieve something. Before he tricked Yiji into practicing art, although the child's skill is relatively pitiful, his inner strength is pure. But only until the child's body becomes broken, after completing almost all the kung fu techniques in the world. Rising from his knees, the abbot began to bless the children. You three entered the Shaolin Temple today. You may be secular disciples, but you also represent the Shaolin Temple. When you are in a temple, you must respect your master. Suddenly he was called out by some monks climbing to the top. It was Hong along with Jing. They were in a hurry to convey to the abbot what Master Qian had sent. Some time ago, our hero asked Mr. Delu to find someone to sew appropriate clothes for the residents of the Shaolin Temple, since the temple is now different, and the time has come to change the monastic robe. But abbot, this material costs a lot of money. Shaolin has been using a lot of silver lately. I began to worry about the amount of treasury of the Hong Temple. Everything is fine. People depend on their clothes and horses on their saddle. It's time to fix everything. Our hero stopped his lamentation. He believed that the neat and clean robes of the monks were also a means of promoting the temple. In addition, this time he also earned money, so it's time to improve his image. The next month flew by quickly. Grunting, it was Su Qiang's foot that smashed the brick into pieces with a swing in the air. Such great progress in less than a month. You are very talented in martial arts. After watching the teenager for some time, Yiji praised him. Mr. Abbot, it was Master Jing who taught me so well. Qiang was modest. Hearing the praise, Jing blushed slightly with embarrassment. There is no need to be modest. If you hadn't worked so hard and studied so well, you wouldn't have achieved so much success so quickly. Come with me to meet our guest. Our hero suggested heading to the temple gates. The guys, looking up from their work, followed him. A couple of minutes earlier, Hoi Min reported to the abbot in a panic that a group of people had appeared outside the gates wanting to see him. Hearing the news, the abbot became wary. Is it possible that it is someone from Fawang Temple, such as Li Xuan? But as soon as he left the gate, the monk realized that it was something worse. On both sides of the entrance stood soldiers with spears on their right hand and left hand. However, he shouldn't have worried so much. We haven't seen each other for a month. How are you doing? Shangguan asked, coming out of the cool shadow into the heat of the sun. This was the same military man whose true desire turned out to be a transparent waterfall with half-naked girls. Master Shangguan is still in good shape. I am very glad. In response, our hero greeted the guests with folded hands. Sheng leaned towards the old man standing next to him. He was old, but his hair and long beard were not gray, and his skin had not yet dried to his bones. Mr. Guan, this is Master Yiji, a true monk of the path, the only one who can communicate with Buddha. The military man introduced the monk to the old man. Can he really be great at such a young age? It seems that this time I made another trip in vain, the old man said, nervously twitching his mustache and looking menacingly from under his cap, not counting on anything. Old Mr. Guan, the abbot may be young, but he has real abilities. Wait a little. Let him do something for you, and you will understand everything, Shangguan asked in a pleading voice. Okay, we're here anyway, so we might as well listen. The old man agreed to his persuasion. All this time, our hero stood nearby, smiling and silent, surprised that visitors really talk about him when he is nearby. If it weren't for the fact that they served in the army, then no one would even listen to them. Abbot, old Mr. Guan is the father of Mr. Sectarian, and we came here from the Sectarian's residence after a subordinate talked to him about Shaolin. So please take a look at this, the man asked again in a slightly softened voice. Our hero grew gloomy. Master Shangguan, as they say, medicine heals the sick, and Buddhism guides the doomed. I see that Master Guan does not trust me, and if so, then I think he has no destiny with my Shaolin, so you should go back. Having realized what was what, he answered Yiji's plea. The already serious Mr. Guan became blacker than a cloud. Little monk, do you know what price you will pay for this statement? Whether it's the soldiers behind me or me, destroying your Shaolin is as easy as shelling pears. Think about it. The old man decided to show his power over the world to his mentor, but his threat had no effect on the abbot. Standing behind him, Su Qiang was surprised by the behavior of our hero. How can he laugh in such a situation? I am a monk. I have been listening to the teachings of Buddha since I was young. I know this is all deception. What can your swords and weapons do to me? Yiji asked, continuing to smile. Looking into his calm eyes, Mr. Guan asked if the young man was not afraid of death. The abbot's answer was simple. He would never trade the peace of Shaolin for the enlightenment of Master Guan, and therefore he has nothing to fear. Our hero realized that this old man had status and abilities. If the abbot does not convince him, then Mr. Guan will not take Shaolin seriously, let alone respect the temple. Meanwhile, the elderly visitor in his heart admired the courage and bravery of the young monk who stood before him. Abbot, don't be offended. Elder Guan is only joking with you. If I really offended you, a person who can communicate with the Buddha, wouldn't I have made a big mistake? Shangguan tried to smooth relations between the two sides. Master Guan really doesn't want to destroy my temple? Asked the abbot, worried about the fate of Shaolin. I wouldn't dare. The old man shook his head, folded his hands in front of his chest, and bowed his head. Okay, Suqiang, close the door. Turning his back to the guests, he walked inside the temple courtyard and ordered Yijie. The boy immediately began to carry out the abbot's orders. Mr. Gan and Master Xiong could not believe that this was done to them. Hey, are you just going to leave us here? They shouted. Suddenly the gate opened. Shangguan was overjoyed. Will they really be released? But it turned out to be Chang, who gave the old man a blanket so as not to get sick since the nights were cold. After such an appeal from the temple abbot, even Shangguan himself did not know what the old man's reaction would be. Please don't be impulsive again, the soldier begged. But the elderly man only thanked the abbot for his kindness, and he himself planned to stay the night outside the temple gates. Master Xiong suggested that he go down the mountain and find an inn and return to Shaolin in the morning. But Guan has already decided everything because he can afford to wait 10 days or 100, not to mention one night. You should hurry back. The Buddhist sect is a pure place, and you, people with swords and spears, have no place here. The old man gave the order. Shangguan was about to object to him, but looking into the gentleman's eyes, he instantly became silky. Got it. We're already leaving. Be careful not to catch a cold. He said goodbye and went in the opposite direction from Shaolin. Night fell on the world, and Lord Guan was still sitting in the lotus position in front of the temple gate. Abbot, you must be a god, because this old man is really waiting at the temple. Boy Su told about the whereabouts of the visitor. With the help of the wind, a leaf fell onto Yiji's head. He took it with 2 fingers and looked at it thoughtfully. When you take the initiative and ask the other person, he is not impressed and even considers you a liar. When you ignore him, he thinks you have real skills and stand up for him. This is the bad nature of man. The abbot shared another law of life, and he gave the piece of paper to the boy, after which he wished me a good night and a good rest. Only now he himself went to stay awake. While there was time and opportunity, he improved the energy of qi. The progress was so strong that it accumulated in the shape of a ball in his hands. Over time, our hero's martial art has improved significantly, and the true qi in his body has shown signs of flowing. When true qi can flow throughout the body, he will be considered to have entered the middle stage of Hutian. The young man perked up. It turns out that he even lost track of time a little, and the July lottery had already arrived. The young man had previously studied the pattern of light points in previous drawings. The distance between the starting point and the prize varies significantly. He did this with the goal of calculating the lottery this time. The final draw between the Lion's Roar squares and the grand prize was 14 squares. If the light points are regular, then this time Yiji should choose the Book of the Bodhisattva's precept. But even this prize would be incredibly lucky. If the judgment is not accurate, then the light dots will most likely fall to the left or right of the main prize, and this time, a worthless item will be drawn. But what else could our hero do except take risks? He even felt funny from the realization that he, a poor monk, was ready to exchange his single life of his master brother for a correct judgment about the law of the lottery. After spinning the wheel of happiness, the young man received 3 more chances to win the lottery. In full combat readiness, Yiji decided to use them immediately, and he received an inscription, an order to build a mountain gate and 1 reed. Suddenly the system screen went dark and an unexpected boot appeared. The monk became worried. Is it really the system that's broken? Or maybe a virus? While the young man was thoughtfully looking at the screen, legs with hooves appeared from it, painfully striking our hero on the chin. Out of surprise, the monk fell out of bed, and there was something to be surprised about. because in front of him stood a snow-white horse with a black mane. Having calmed down, the monk approached the animal and stroked it. He planned, when he became more respectable, to go out into the world on this white horse. In general, our hero so casually noticed that his life was getting better and better. Actually, like the mood, the construction of structures can be explained by the miracle of Buddha. But this white horse cannot be a gift from Buddha, because no one will believe it. Having thought about it, the abbot ordered the animal to enter and stop at the entrance to the pagoda of 10,000 Buddhas. Having looked at his master for the last time, the horse disappeared into the thicket of the forest. Having dealt with prize number 1, the abbot began to familiarize himself with the following rewards. Next came the 1 reed benefit. The advantage of this technique was that it did not require internal strength. As long as there is a place where you can take a little power, a person can remain light all the time. According to legend, a Dharma teacher once broke a reed and threw it into the river while standing on it to cross the Yangtze River. Gradually, the knowledge of the opened books began to flow into the young man's memory. But to cross the Yangtze River with the help of reeds, you need to ride on the reeds, resisting the wind and waves on the river. And our hero did not yet have such strength. When he reaches a certain level of inner strength, he will also be able to accomplish the feat of crossing the river with the help of reeds. But as for the book itself, now that Ironhead Kung Fu is not yet practiced to a small extent, it is not worth giving Jing such a high level of ease, and no one else was created to study martial arts in those currently present in Shaolin. The good thing is that not everyone in the temple needs to know martial arts, so in the future, it will be enough to allow only monks to practice martial arts. Yiji left his house, taking a deep breath of the evening air, and wanted to try some light kung fu. Without straining at all, he flew into the air, could land on tree leaves without bending the branches, perform various somersaults without making noise. "Is this really the abbot?" asked a voice in the silence of the night. Yiji turned towards the sound. "Abbot, who are you?" asked Mr. Guan, who was at the temple gate. He did not expect to see the abbot on the roof of the house. But our hero blames himself for being so happy that he forgot that the old man had not left yet. "Master Guan, haven't you rested yet?" asked the monk, landing in front of the old man with the grace of a ballerina and a cat. "I was going to rest, but I heard a sound. I decided to greet you," explained the elderly man. The purpose of this old man's visit to Shaolin is to find the tools of Buddhist magic. And currently, I only have wooden fish in stock, so I really can't give them to him. Looking at him in this state, I am afraid that he will not calm down if he is not satisfied too, the abbot thought as he examined the guest. "Mr. Abbot, do you want to tell me something?" Seeing the thoughtful face of the young man, Mr. Guan asked. "The poor monk saw Buddha again in a dream," Yiji answered him after a pause. "Did you really communicate with Buddha?" Hearing the news, the old man perked up. "Yes, Buddha often trusts me with his dreams," our hero confirmed. Mr. Guan was already bursting with a desire to find out from the inside what God himself said to the young man. "Buddha entrusted me with the dream that he would again show a miracle and give me the mountain gate to Shaolin." The young man told about the dream, and without saying another word, he went to the foot of the Shaolin mountain. Mr. Guan, wishing with all his heart to see the miracle, followed him. "Mr. Abbot, I am 60 years old, and I have never seen the miracle of Buddha. I have never seen anything related to Buddha nature. My deepest desire is to receive an item blessed by Buddha. I hope the abbot will allow me to go and see the miracles of the Buddha for the sake of my devotion." He chattered on the way to the desired location. "Master Guan, how can the Buddha's miracles be easily seen by outsiders during their descent?" Listening to how the old man could barely keep up with him, he suddenly asked, "Yijie, I am not considered an outsider. I am also a follower of Buddha. I have this opportunity. I must see," Grandpa objected. Our hero has wanted to check something about him for a very long time. "Old Master Guan, if you have to follow me, then the poor monk will have to leave you behind. I'm young and strong. You won't be able to keep up with me," he said. And with these words he used light kung fu, leaving the old man perplexed. If you look at the whole of central China, there are only 5 people with weaker skills than me, he thought. Watching the young man jump from tree to tree with incredible ease. "Don't try to get rid of me. I will watch the miracle of Buddha," Guan shouted, instantly taking off and losing his blanket somewhere below on the ground. He didn't seem to have lost Yiji, but he couldn't catch up either. He became more and more amazed at the young abbot's profound martial arts skills at such a young age and his strength. Our hero was sure that the elderly visitor was watching him, but decided to let him see the miracle with his own eyes, because he wanted to see what the old man would do after what he saw. Having chosen a more or less suitable place, he finally stopped. Fortunately, he had little time until Guan appeared after him and understood what was happening. In a hurry, Yiji pulled out from his bosom a token about the construction of a mountain gate. As when building the pagoda of 10,000 Buddhas, he jumped up, threw the token up, and it gradually began to crumble into dozens of small pieces. When the elderly gentleman landed nearby, trying to even out his breathing, the young man gazed at the sky, after which he sat in the lotus position and the chi energy began to flow around him. Mr. Guan watched what was happening with a sinking heart. Soon our hero began to pretend that he was entering meditation, and as if at the snap of a finger, wooden buildings, beams, and a roof began to appear out of nowhere. Mr. Guan had a face as if he had just seen Jesus Christ walking on water. Finally, the last particle of the token dissolved in the air, and the image of Buddha appeared in front of both male representatives. Without paying any attention to the old man, Yiji began to worship and pray to the image. Gen rejoiced. Miracle of Buddha. He finally saw the miracle of Buddha. "I saw the miracle of Buddha," he shouted, and hot tears flowed from his eyes. "Buddha is above all. It was decided today that I will become a monk, disappear into the void, serve the Buddha forever, and never again have anything to do with the affairs of the Red World." Falling to his knees in front of the monk, the old man announced his decision. For what it's worth, our hero did not expect such a turn of events. "I have a request to the abbot. I ask the abbot to ordain me. Therefore, from today, Guan Shan is a disciple of Shaolin." The military leader was sure that everything would be exactly as he wanted. "You are too old to enter my Shaolin. Now that the Buddha has become a reality, you should quickly leave." EJ refused the request, and leaving the old man in confusion, he turned around and went back along the road leading to the temple. Although our hero wanted Shan Yue to join Shaolin from the very beginning, he was still afraid that the old man would not value what he got too easily, and therefore he would have to ask him 3 times before the young man reluctantly let him into Shaolin. "Abbot, don't look at my age, because my martial arts have already achieved great perfection in the Hotian realm. It won't be long before I can enter the Zhantian. I see that Shaolin is still recruiting lay students and needs someone to teach the martial arts." Mr. Guan trailed behind the abbot like a little dog. "Do you think I won't be able to teach?" Made a claim to the elderly man Yiji. "The abbot's kung fu is of course unparalleled in the world, but abbot, you are a noble man, so you cannot teach these untalented youths yourself." "I'm sorry," Mr. Guan explained his above words. "I have a weak son, but he is a minister. Therefore, if someone from the government disturbs the Shaolin temple, I can deal with it." The old man began to tell the advantages of becoming a teacher. In response, the abbot only recommended that he watch his words. Although our hero specifically took on all this trouble for the sake of connections, with such support from the cultists, neither New Air nor Li Xuan nor Fawang Temple will attack Shaolin anymore, and the development of the temple in central China will proceed more smoothly. Guanshan has martial arts skills and experience. This is exactly the kind of talent that Shaolin desperately needs at the moment, not to mention the fact that he has seen the miracle with his own eyes and has no problems with loyalty. "Abbot, I can still teach and read." The elderly man began to pray again and again. "No, that means no. The poor monk must return." The abbot refused again, walking towards the temple. After another refusal, Guan no longer knew what to do and therefore fell to his knees. "Teacher Guan, you are not meant for Buddha, so why force yourself?" Without turning around at the creaking of the old man's knees, Ijie asked, "Since the abbot does not want to accept me, there is only one way out." With these words, Shan Yue pulled out the dagger that he always carried with him. "What are you going to do?" the abbot shouted, instantly summoning the technique of the roar of a formidable lion. In the blink of an eye, the sound waves overtook the old man. Out of fear, he was unable to control his emotions, and therefore the weapon fell from his hands. "I was not trying to disrespect the abbot." The elderly man began to apologize, after which he raised the dagger and pointed the tip of the blade towards himself, towards his chest. Our hero was seriously scared. He didn't want the person standing in front of him to commit suicide. Fortunately, everything worked out. Mr. Guan only cut off his beard at the root. The monk froze in confusion and bewilderment. "Abbot, I have already shown my true desire when I knelt at the mountain gate, so I have no hope of joining Shaolin as a monk. I am sincere in my desires. Again, only now shaved and without a beard, the elderly man asked again. Yiji sighed heavily. What's wrong with this old man? Oh, there's no need to suffer. If you are sincere, I will accept you as a student. The young man finally agreed. Thank you very much, Abbot. Shan Yui sincerely thanked with all his heart. I'm so smart, I begged, stood on my knees, shaved my head and beard, and finally made an impression on this callous abbot. Looking after the leaving young man, the old man praised himself. At breakfast, all the residents of the Shaolin Temple met in the dining room. May the Buddha bless you with the food donated. May the power of the Buddha bless you, and may you use food as medicine to heal people's illnesses. May food become the water of great compassion and alleviate the suffering of all beings. Let food be used as the water of wisdom to instill the peaks of all living beings and increase the roots of wisdom, Buddha Amitabha. The abbot of the temple prayed over the food before eating. The rest of us bent over the plate in complete silence. Buddha Amitabha. Yiji finally finished his prayer, after which I decided to introduce everyone to their new older brother, Guanshan Yue. Welcome to the Shaolin Temple, senior uncle, the students greeted in unison. Guan is on the verge of entering the Jiantian region and will be in charge of training you in martial arts. You will also be following him in his martial arts training in the future. Now let's eat together, suggested the abbot. Super, big uncle. Don't worry, I will study carefully. Jing promised without taking his eyes off the old man. I will definitely teach you everything I know in return, Shan Yue swore. He was pleased that he entered the temple before Hui Zhen and Hui Min, but neither of them received the title of first master from the abbot. If there was a teacher who would guide me personally, I would soon become a better master myself. Our hero thought while watching the cheerful chatter of Jing and Guan. Moreover, Su Qiang is extremely talented in martial arts, and with Guan Shan as a super expert, the boy will definitely surpass Jing in time. After this, the abbot and Huang Fei Hong, Chang, and Tianyu will teach other students. Soon, a monastic system of martial arts will be created in the Shaolin Temple. At least that's what our hero planned. Suddenly, the dining room door opened wide, and a breathless Fei Hong appeared in the doorway. Master Abbot, that's all he said. Huan, what is it? Putting the chopsticks aside, the excited Yiji immediately asked, but the young man still could not calm down and come to his senses. Abbot, a terrible thing happened. There is also a miracle in Fawang Temple, Fei Hun said after catching his breath. However, the news did not take our hero by surprise. Remaining absolutely calm, he continued to eat. Since the appearance of the miracle in the Shaolin Temple, followers of Buddhism from the vicinity of Mount Shaoxi have constantly come to see the miracle pagoda of 10,000 Buddhas. Later, the Shaolin Temple began to recruit lay disciples, which increased people's enthusiasm. The prosperity of Shaolin inevitably led to the decline of Fawang Temple, another Buddhist monastery on Mount Shaoxi. So it is quite expected that Fawang Temple during this period quietly created a so-called miracle ready to compete with our Shaolin. The abbot calmly explained, What kind of miracle? Do you think miracles are just cabbage? I saw the wonders of Shaolin with my own eyes, and I saw it for the first time in my life. After listening to the abbot, Guan expressed his opinion. True, but those miracles must be fake. Abbot, what should we do? They are going to hold a fair at the temple on the 8th of July in honor of a fake miracle. Fei Hun butted into the conversation. On the way to Shaolin, he noticed that some people had already begun to talk about the miracle and the newly recruited lay disciples, who undoubtedly would also have had wrong thoughts, if not for this mountain gate descending from the Buddha at the foot of the mountain. I absolutely agree with you that they are incorrect. Some time ago I went to Fawang to look for something with Buddha nature. So this old monk Li Kongguo brought out a bunch of rags to perfume me. If it weren't for the fact that it was a Buddhist temple, I would have demolished it. Shan Yue told about the fraud. Abbot, if you give the order, I will go to the Fawang Temple and burn it to the ground. I will look at those who dared to come to Shaolin to take revenge. I can barely control my emotions, the old man promised. Senior uncle, don't be reckless. I already understand what you want to do. There's no need to say more about this, swore the old man Yiji's bad motives. After which he addressed everyone else, reminding them that Buddha blessed Shaolin, and only Shaolin. And the abbot also knows that all other miracles are false. But he is glad that now there is such an opportunity. If the Fawang Temple wanted to compete with the Shaolin Temple, then the baton has been accepted. After breakfast, everyone went about their business. For example, Fei Hun was sweeping the temple courtyard, admiring the beauty of the fallen leaves, and Master Guan was looking for Yiji in order to give him an urgent small parcel. Finally, he found the abbot. The parcel turned out to be a letter. The sender turned out to be the Dharma King Temple, and it is quite possible that the address there was Li Xuan. Full of curiosity, our hero began to read the contents of the letter. The abbot of the Shaolin Temple. The little monk of the first ring. I am the abbot of the Fawang Likongo Temple. This year I turned 72 years old. I have studied Buddhism since childhood. At the age of 5, I could recite the entire Heart Sutra. At the age of 9, I was ordained and became an official disciple of the Fawang Temple. At the age of 17, I performed pujas and was accepted by all parties. At the age of 30, I became abbot, and at the age of 42, abbot. Even so, I dare not say that I can communicate with the Buddha. You, a young monk who is less than 20 years old, have been abbot for 2 days, and dare to deceive the people and deceive the neighbors. I prayed to the Buddha day and night for guidance, and the Buddha with mercy sent down the Mahamuni temple from the sky to pierce your skin and reveal the Buddha's true intention. All this was written in the message. After reading the letter, Yiji was delighted. He thought about what to do with his rivals, but now they showed up first. Don't blame me for the mercilessly verse, our hero said quietly, as if out loud to himself. Hearing how Abbot Shan Yue put it, he asked him what he meant. This is just a method of provoking a hypocrite, as can be seen at first glance. Our hero explained. Burning with a desire for interest, the old man himself began to read the letter. Having learned the contents of the text, he crumpled the paper in anger. Their temple is nothing. You will do them a favor if you go there. So let me go and burn down their temple, Guan asked. But the abbot already had a plan. For a minute, the old man listened to the young man whispering in his ear. Okay. I'm going to make everything look great and make their opening ceremony a great spectacle, grandfather promised, heading towards the enemy's temple. 3 days later, the Fawang Temple kindly opened its gates wide, letting in the laity. But people were not interested in offerings and lighting candles of incense. They came to see the miracle of Buddha, over which they threw a red cloth, as if building a kind of tent. What is under this red cloth? Asked a man in the crowd. Haven't you heard? This is the miracle of Fawang Temple, explained the girl standing nearby in a pink kimono. But not all visitors have yet arrived to the opening of the miracle. The last of the guests was Yijie riding his white horse, with Mr. Guan walking ahead and leading the horse by the reins. A monk stopped the guys at the gate. Greetings, master. But do you have an invitation? The monk inquired about the admission ticket. Guan silently handed him the letter. With a radiant smile, the monk began to read the letter, surprised at the crumpled state the paper was in, and soon couldn't believe his eyes. In front of him was really standing the abbot of the Shaolin Temple, a single ring. While the monk was confused, our hero got tired of waiting. How dare you detain a guest invited by the abbot of the Fawang Temple? Guan began to make a claim. The monk immediately stepped aside to let him pass. Once in the courtyard of the Yiji Temple, he used kung fu, moving over the heads of the amazed visitors, because he did not want to make his way through the crowd. After some time, he noticed that Mr. Guan was not next to him. Senior uncle, let's go. He turned to the old man. Having read the abbot's invitation from his lips, Shan Yue turned to the monk and handed him the reins of the horse. Listen here. The sacred horse of the Shaolin Temple eats only the best grass, so serve it carefully. In a voice that did not tolerate any objections, he ordered the monk at the gate, who had no choice but to go to the stable. Turning their heads from side to side, representatives of the Shaolin Temple noticed a line of beggars. They all waited until they were given a few pieces of bread and a bowl of soup, smart enough to understand that this is propaganda coming from a miracle that is not credible. So they came up with a method of distributing porridge in order to attract the homeless. Yiji commented on what he saw. This is so hypocritical. Mr. Guan agreed with him. Although the starting point for the miracle was the competition with Shaolin, still the distribution of food was a good thing. Looking at all the fuss that arose around the Fawang Temple, our hero noted that this time they made a lot of efforts so as not to fall face in the dirt. While he was thinking, Shan Yue saw a tree nearby that gave everyone shade, and offered to hide there from the sun. Yiji gladly supported his idea. At this time, Li Kong, together with Li Xuan, greeted the visitor. It's been a long time, Governor Liu. The abbot bowed to the influential guest. The governor bowed in response. While the abbot and Li were engaged in small talk, Zhuan noticed Yijie chatting among the people. Li Xuan, the opening ceremony is about to begin. Go quickly and inform the other students. Not noticing the condition of the warden, the abbot ordered. But looking at the man's face, he asked what was wrong with him. Brother, it's him. I would recognize him even in the ashes. The abbot of the Shaolin Temple, Li explained, gritting his teeth. And our hero, not noticing that they were discussing him behind his back, had fun talking with the other visitors. We will disgrace him today. The opening ceremony will begin soon. Go and organize. Congo again ordered, patting the warden on the shoulder encouragingly. Having cooled down slightly, Xuan went to follow the instructions. Finally, the bells began to sound. The hammers clattered in the fish race. The monks lined up and chanted the mantra. The abbot of the Temple Favant, seated in a chair decorated with patterns, looked down on everyone. He is the king of Dharma, the temple of the king of Dharma. An old monk of average ability who, at over 70 years of age, has not yet reached the late Hutian stage. Mr. Guan Yiji said, pointing to Li Congo, I think that the one next to him is Congo's elder brother, Master Li Zhe from the Sangoku Temple, whom the Fawang Temple specially sent to help him. I don't know this person either, but no one other than Li Zhe from the great Sangoku Temple is qualified enough to receive such a preference from Li Kong. This monk, Li Ji, compared to Li Congo and Li Xuan, has the appearance of a perfected monk. Shan Yue continued to tell. Finally, the abbot of the Fawang Temple deigned to get up from his chair and greeted everyone who deigned to appear at the opening of the miracle. Thanks to the love of the Buddha, the heavens sent down the hall of merit and virtue of the Fawang Temple. The temple holds this opening ceremony to invite everyone to see this miracle. Li Congo said his speech. Lately, there have been a lot of rumors on Shaoxi Mountain, and some small sects are claiming to have received a miracle from the Buddha, which is truly absurd. Today, I would like to let you all share in the merits and virtues, but I also want you to be vigilant and not be deceived by some sects with ulterior motives. Li Xuan spoke after the abbot, listening to the monks of the Fawang Temple. Our hero only had to hold Mr. Guan so that he would not do anything out of anger. Abbot Congo, we saw with our own eyes the miracle of the Shaolin Temple. One day there was no pagoda, and the next day it appeared. One person from the crowd objected to Kong. Yes, it is. It cannot be a fake, confirmed another person. These people must have been asked to come here by a young monk from the Shaolin Temple. What an absurdity. This monk is a liar, living on loans, and his so-called miracles are just a way to deceive people to get their loans back. Tried to expose our hero in response to Li Xuan's objection. How dare you spit in the faces of others? I came here because you said I could get a bowl of porridge and 2 buns for coming here to watch the ceremonies. A man in patched clothes emerged from the middle of the crowd. That's right. If it weren't for that bowl of porridge and 2 big white buns, who would want to come all this way? Master, how can you guarantee that this temple of yours is a real miracle? We didn't see it with our own eyes. It could have been built secretly. Another supported the man. Feeling that everything was not going according to plan, Li Xuan gradually began to get angry. Abbot, do you see justice in the heart? After waiting until there was silence, Mr. Guan decided to speak out. Following him, Yiji decided to put in his 2 cents, where he said that the Fawang Temple cannot pretend, cannot fake, and cannot live with its sins any longer. And discontent in the crowd began to grow. Eventually, even Li Zhi's self-control began to desert him. He coughed artificially in order to urge everyone to remain quiet. And after the rector and the overseer of the temple, he also decided to give a speech. Looking at the man, our hero felt that the inner strength of this monk was very strong. At least he had a Hutian great circle for sure. Buddha Amitabha, the poor monk abbot of the great Sangoku Temple in the capital Liji, met the abbot of Shaolin. One Ring decided to directly eliminate Li Ji's opponent in front of everyone. Listen to the man's address. Yiji did not expect that there was such a bad character in the Fawang Temple, and he wondered if they had discovered what the Shaolin abbot forced Mr. Guan to do. The great Sangoku is a national temple, and Zen Master Li Zhi is a revered monk. Therefore, I am ashamed that Zen Master Li Zhi met me. Yiji came forward from the crowd and greeted him. Shouts of exclamation arose among the people. They did not expect to see 2 whole, strong spiritual personalities at one time. Since ancient times, heroes have emerged from their youth. I heard that the abbot of Shaolin is favored by the Buddha. He is exceptionally gifted and intelligent, so I have business with the abbot of Yijie. I need an advice, Li Ji said with feigned sincerity. I wonder what the master from the great Sangoku wants to ask this abbot. Don't hesitate to ask if you don't understand something. Our hero prepared to listen to the question, but it was not as simple as it seemed to others at first glance. Brother, this boy has a sharp tongue and is not easy to deal with. Don't get in his way. Li Xuan whispered into the ear of the master from Sangoku from behind. Li Zhu listened to his advice and began to tell the story publicly to everyone. One man came to the temple to worship Buddha and saw next to him a man worshipping a statue of the goddess of mercy. Upon closer inspection, he discovered that this person was actually the goddess of mercy enshrined in the temple. The abbot of the first ring thought, why does Kuan Yin worship Kuan Yin? Having told the beginning of the story, Ji asked. Yiji stretched his mind and came to the conclusion that it was an illusion created by internal force. Putting his hand on his heart, our hero replied, it is important to seek the Buddha, but you should never place your entire destiny on the Buddha. First of all, you should rely on yourself. This step of the Bodhisattva is a warning to the world that it is better to ask others than to ask oneself. This was the answer of the abbot of the Shaolin Temple. Without paying attention to the correct answer, Li Zhu continued to ask riddles. A warrior holding a live fish in his hand asks the abbot whether this fish is alive or dead. The question was, so this is how the abbot should have answered. If the answer was that the fish was dead, the samurai let it go. But if the answer was that it was alive, the samurai secretly squeezed the fish to death, regardless of the fact that the answer was wrong. Mr. Guan answered the above question in his thoughts. The poor monk guessed that the fish was dead. Yiji replied, stupid! When the samurai released the fish, it fell down. It was still alive. You guessed wrong. Without hiding a smug smile, Li Xuan corrected the abbot of the Shaolin Temple. The poor monk guessed wrong, but the fish survived. Agreeing with him, our hero humbly accepted his defeat. There is no need to be clever here. You created a rumor that none of us saw the Buddha's miracle and will not believe it. Guan snapped. Li Ji joked at him to be quieter. The next one asked the riddle of Yiji. Teacher Li Xuan, I have a stone in my hand. Do you believe it or not? He asked, putting his left hand forward. How can I know if I haven't seen him? The warden said without hesitation. Our hero unclenched his fingers, and a small pebble fell from his palm. What you haven't seen doesn't exist, he asked a rhetorical question. All these matters can be discussed with the abbot of the first ring later, but since now is almost an auspicious time, let's proceed with the opening ceremony. Li Ji tried to calm both sides, after which he again addressed the expectant crowd of people. The auspicious time has come, and the ceremony of opening miracles in the Favong Monastery has begun. With recognition of the miracle of Buddha, behold all. After his words, a dozen monks approached a kind of tent and began to pull off the red cloth. The roof was covered in gold, patterns decorated everything. Even in the modern world, it would take a modern architect and designer a long time to come up with something similar to this beautiful building. The hall of the great hero is 20 feet long and 10 feet wide. It contains the real body of Buddha, 4 bodhisattva statues and 4 bodhisattva portraits, 4 bodhisattvas, 500 Lohan statues. They all came to our temple a month ago. After the common people began to gradually move away from surprise, he began to talk about the decoration of the temple. Li Kongo. Looking at the false miracle, Yiji estimated the cost of building such a building, about 100,000 taels. This door is 1 foot thick and cannot be pushed by anyone without divine power. The abbot of the Favong Temple continued to throw pink dust into his eyes. This door costs several tens of melts. Someone's voice shouted at the foot of the temple. Several dozen taels? Never. Kong began to snap and immediately caught himself because he was set up and he almost spilled the beans. So, the doors of the temple are now officially open. So if you want to see the miracle of Buddha, please prepare some incense, and once the doors open, you can enter. Kongo announced, pretending that nothing had happened. And he did not lie. The doors of the temple were indeed heavy. Even 4 monks had difficulty opening them. People began to push each other, stepping on each other's feet in order to take a closer look and be the first to enter the temple. And they immediately regretted their desire. Actually, like Li Xuan and Li Jie, who are in front of everyone. At first, Kong didn't understand why everyone was so panicked and turned to the temple in order to understand the cause of the concern. And he was horrified by reality. Several thick, long, poisonous snakes were wrapped around a huge Buddha statue. One of them marked Kong her first victim and rushed towards him. Horrified, the abbot lost consciousness and fell onto the marble steps. The warden barely had time to pick up his limp body. Sins. It was the poor monk's fault. Being shocked by what he saw, Li Ji truly believed in Buddha, after which he turned 180 degrees and walked away. "Where are you going?" Xuan called out to him. "From today the poor monk will close the door of death and repent before the Buddha." The monk answered in one sentence. Li Xuan cried with anger like a little child, because all his work had gone down the drain. "It's you! I know it's you!" he shouted, turning to Yitze. "Teacher, don't talk nonsense." Buddha accused and sent down punishment. "How can you blame the poor monk for this?" Our hero turned away the arrows of suspicion. "No need to be cunning. How can a Buddha statue change? It must be you who did something. There are 2 sacred Buddha relics in Shaolin. If you can destroy them, then so be it. The poor monk will never do this." He objected, step by step approaching his opponent. But if the Buddha statues break, it only means that the miracles are fake and are used to deceive people. Faking miracles, deceiving people, taking advantage of opportunities to get rich, and insulting the Buddhist sect. In the voice of the abbot of the Shaolin temple, light notes of a lion's roar were felt. In fear, Xuan did not find anything to answer to this. "This abbot does not want to be in your company. Coming here today is a mistake, and this abbot will immediately return to Shaolin and repent to the Buddha." Yijie, disappointed in his visit, commented on the opening of the event, and without turning his gaze to anyone, he headed towards the exit. People looking after him wished him a good journey and said goodbye to him. Only this word, farewell, our hero didn't really like. That same evening the bad weather raged, the rain poured like buckets. Chen Dingchen in his estate, as always, was doing what he loved, lazily fanning himself. Li Xuan was kneeling in front of him, asking for advice. "This story has spread throughout Dongfeng County. So what should I do here? What if I know?" he asked. "So what if I know? So what if I don't know?" Dingchen said, avoiding answering. He did not understand his interlocutor. Now that the defeat of Fawang Temple has already been decided, how do they still want to fight? But this was very important to Xuan. In exchange for help, if Dingchen helps him defeat the Shaolin Temple, all the income of the Fawang Temple for the next 5 years will be from the Iron Fairy. Chen could not refuse such a good offer, and therefore the deal was concluded. A month has passed since the failure of the opening ceremony of the miracle in the Fawang Temple. The temple was very limited. After that, there was no longer a single incense carrier in it. Reverend Li Kong announced the temple's dissolution, and then disappeared, without a trace. Monks big and small sought their own path. Only the monk Li Xuan was with 4 or 5 fighting monks, swore revenge on the first ring. And in the Shaolin Temple, everything was no better. Today it was Su's turn to go shopping. At the market they loved him and often even tried to feed him treats. He felt a little sorry for the Fawang Temple, but what can he do? Because they were the first to challenge. Only he didn't like Li Xuan. He understood that this was a bad dream, but he wanted to thoroughly beat the crap out of the warden. Walking through the market, the boy suddenly saw a huge shadow on the ground in front of him. "Finally, they caught you!" shouted a rough male voice behind Su. Following this, a heavy hand fell on the teenager's head, but he managed to return. Only vegetables flew in a hail onto the road from the basket the boy was carrying. His opponent was the second bull. "You are a good fighter, but I feel sorry for you. If you weren't this vulture's lackey, I would take you in as my younger brother." New Heir admitted, his eyes sparkling. "Don't insult the abbot!" The teenager tried to bite his tongue. "I will not only insult this vulture, but I will also beat you!" The second bull snapped, interrupting the boy. Xiang decided not to wait and struck first with his feet. If Jing had watched the fight, he would have been pleased with his student's fighting skills. Because the first blow caused the second bull to bleed from his nose, and he could not stay on his feet. But someone's hand supported him in time. It was Chen Dingchen. "Little master, is it the quality of your Shaolin temple to fight on the street?" he asked the boy. Chiang couldn't even answer him, because this man's aura was darker than night. He immediately felt that this man was very dangerous, and he should run away without looking back. But I didn't have time. With a crunch, breaking through the wooden table of the counter with his back, Su covered his head, protecting it from the blow. For a second, he even lost consciousness. After waiting for the boy to come to his senses, Chen walked up to him and threw a folded sheet in his direction. "Save your life and give this to Abbot Yitze," the man ordered. Smiling echidna, he decided to leave the scene of the fight, as onlookers gradually began to gather and comment on what had happened. "Quickly go to Shaolin and find Master Yiji," the salesman of a nearby store commanded. "What a sin to raise your hand against such a small child." The customers passing by groaned. Su Qiang was finally home. Having carefully covered the boy with a blanket, the abbot stood with his eldest uncle by his bed. "How is that possible?" "Abbot, I will go and take out my anger on them." Not holding back negative emotions, seeing the students suffering, Guan asked. "Chen Dingchen has always been smart, but this time he dared to attack my Shaolin disciples right on the street for a different reason," Yijie explained, pulling a letter from the boy's pocket. The message said that Dingchen would hold the Dengchen Ring on the first day of August to challenge Shaolin. Even the swear words existing in the language could not express all those negative emotions that surged through the old man. It is said that recently, he has become very close to Li Xuan of Fawang Temple. I'm afraid that Li Xuan promised something to Dingchen to force him to provoke Shaolin, our hero suggested. So this is how it is, a snake and a rat in one nest. Shan Yue mentioned the proverb. What is the abbot's next step? "If you want, I will go and kill them all. If you don't want to be a nuisance, we can call ourselves a Buddhist sect and not interfere with the prop master's affairs," he suggested. In truth, this was a reasonable decision, since the Buddhist sects could avoid the long-planned tournament. But it was not what Yijie wanted, because he was given two tasks. Shaolin must become the #1 sect in the world, and Shaolin should become a martial arts league. They meant that sooner or later Shaolin had to enter Jiangku, and this Dengfen Ring was a good opportunity to train disciples. Watching the abbot, Mr. Guan did not understand his reaction, and could not come to terms with the fact that the abbot probably would not do anything. After the opening ceremony of the Dharma King Temple, our hero drew the first half of Prajna Kung Fu of the Dragon and the Elephant, and together with Iron Head Kung Fu, Lion Bear Kung Fu, and Kung Fu of one reed crossing the river, he became as strong as the martial master of the middle heaven. With an expert like Guan Shanyue as his secret weapon, Shaolin would never lose. In essence, the old man was just a puppet in the hands of the abbot. "If I don't agree to this, I'm afraid that many people, including you, will feel offended," said the abbot. "Abbot, nothing in this world and no one's desires can be hidden from you. You can't just mock us in Shaolin. This is hostility, and we must respond to it." Guan was surprised by the insight of the young man. The text of the letter was as follows. Invitation. The abbot of the first ring himself on the first day of the 8th month, my humble person Li Xuan, the head of the Fa Wang Temple, will hold a 5-match duel in Dengfeng County. Dean, warrior of the wind of the iron evening, how dare you negotiate with me on the terms of the languishing temple? You underestimate me too much. With a burning desire to tear the piece of paper into dozens of pieces, he commented on Yijie's letter and asked the eldest uncle to bring him a pen and paper, after which he went to his personal room and sat down at the table. To fight in the ring, the stakes must of course be equal, otherwise who will play with you? If you, Chen Dingchen, want to participate in the fight between Shaolin Temple and Fawang, then you must be sincere enough to do so. The abbot, who wrote on paper, pronounced the text out loud, as expected from the abbot of the Shaolin Temple. Not only did he not slow down, but he also challenged Chen Dingchen. Abbot Guan admired the action, sealing the letter. Dingchen wants the wolf cubs empty-handed, but it also depends on whether I agree. He has been in Danfan for many years. He must have a lot of money. Plus, the so-called business must be very prosperous. What about our Shaolin? We will definitely make a profit, summed up our hero, and he was so inspired that he accidentally threw an inkwell at his eldest uncle. And in the city there were only rumors about the challenge of the 15th of July. Some advised each other to stay at home and not run into trouble, while others confidently asserted that they would defeat the Shaolin Temple. Two nice girls were discussing the latest news, but suddenly fell silent. They had never seen such a big and strong man in their lives. It was like Iron Bull #2, but even more fierce. But he just wanted to find out something from the girls. But as soon as he opened his mouth, the girls' souls sank from the realization that one of the bulls was standing in front of them. but the man just wanted to know where the best restaurant was in the city. "He's not here to eat people? I'm scared to death," one of the girls thought, pointing the way. "Warrior, there's a Sankailai restaurant in Dengfeng County. White chicken and beef and soy sauce are the best, and the aged devil flower wine is the most delicious of wines." The girls told the story as they walked the strongman. Having thanked the man, he entered the restaurant. After some time, the owner of the establishment approached him. "What, aren't you going to prepare wine for me too? Why are you standing here?" The strong man was the first to start the dialogue. "Sir, your seat is reserved by Mr. Liu, so could you please release him?" the owner asked, stuttering. "It's okay. Just let him talk to me directly when the gentleman arrives." The bull answered, checking the quality of the wine through the glass bowl. "Sorry, but this Mr. Liu is an unusual guns. He is the son of the richest man in Dengfeng Liu Million, Liu Yunhei." The owner began to ask again, but it was too late. "Ha ha ha, Brother Liu. This Dengfeng County has a lot to offer. Brother, come to Dengfeng County whenever you want." The conversation of the young guys reached the ears of the restaurant owner. A little preface. This Liu Yunhei's father sent him to study martial arts at Sangshan School 8 years ago. But the youth did not learn martial arts very well. However, he made many fox friends. He wanders around all day and creates trouble in Dengfeng County. Today, the young man came to the restaurant with his boyfriend and girlfriend. His physical body was quite strong, although his appearance could be considered weak. "Aigu, Master Liu, are you here? You have had to go through a long and difficult journey." The owner of the restaurant greeted the visitor with a smile on his face. "Old trick," Yuni just said, giving the man 1 copper coin. "I'm not looking for reward. I really can the great master eat later?" the owner of the restaurant asked, trying not to show much excitement, and immediately received a severe blow. "So bold. Do you still want to call the shots when Master Liu eats? Aren't you afraid that I'll destroy this damn store of yours?" The arrogant young man covered the man with good obscenities. "Gunts, I'm so sorry, but your place has been taken. I asked him to be released, but I couldn't." The owner began to make excuses. "Take my place? Who dared? Brother, sister, let's go and meet this person," Liu said, heading towards his favorite place.